So we got Jason Bunce of Skulll and Combs, Salon and Barbers. You're recently featured in the Entrepreneur's Top 150, mom and pop shops, and Yelp's Top 150 as well.
Yeah, that was a collaboration between those two. That was a collaboration between those two outlets. So Yelp and Entrepreneur did a collaboration with the help of Yelp's metrics and such. They just determined it was pretty cool experience to get that notification, because we didn't lobby for recognition or anything like that. It was just kind of like out of the blue. I got an email saying that we had been selected, and it was pretty like surreal, because I thought it was spam at first.
Yeah,
I didn't believe it, and then I like copy and pasted the lady's name from the email into like Facebook, and was doing my little Google searching, and then found that she was legit from Yelp.
Yep.
And then Entrepreneur reached out, and I was like, wow, this is for real. And then shortly after, we were featured in the magazine, which was also cool because not every business was featured in the actual magazine. So we got a little extra, recognition.
Your shop is beautiful. You have one in East Rock of New Haven, and then there's the other one over in Fairfield, Norwalk.
Yep.
And the that big mall complex there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. So let's get a little into the background and
Sure.
Tell us about your background and what inspired you to start your business.
Okay. So I was about 35, I think, exactly, when I started hair school. So a lot of stuff behind me at that point, professionally. I did sales. I was a mortgage broker. I sold life insurance. I had a beverage distribution business, which exclusively focused on, I don't know if you remember this, Hype energy drink.
I feel like I can see the logo in my head.
Yeah, Hype was big around Connecticut for a while. It never really got the legs that it needed for like national recognition. But, I spun my wheels quite a bit just trying things. And I bartended for a long time. New Haven was basically the main area that I bartended in, like Alchemy and Sci-Fi Cafe. And I'm going back many years.
I remember Alchemy.
Sure. So I'm going back many years, but I bartended for a long time. I went to Southern Connecticut State University. I think I graduated in 2001, a bachelor's degree. I didn't really know what to do right after college. I didn't feel like, even though I had a degree in a specific area, it was still very broad, if that makes sense. It was corporate communication. Didn't really like narrow things down for me for, as far as like picking a very specific career path from there. But I was bartending at the time, and I made a ton of money for a college kid, college-aged man. And I just continued to bartend for years after that. And then I think maybe like 2004, I kind of decided that I needed to maybe like find a profession. And then I stumbled into the mortgage business just by chance. It was just a friend of mine was working at a shop. And if you remember that time, the 2003 to 8 range was like a boom, like a refi boom. So the mortgage brokers were all killing it. And he was making big money. And I got involved, and I made, nearly 6 figures in my first year, which was, if it was 9 months, I made a really good earning, and I was like, wow, this is great. So I did that for several years. 2008 is when the crash, I smelt it. We smelt it coming. Anybody who was in the mortgage business kind of smelt that coming. All the banks, the subprime lenders that were going under. We knew that it was either like, you're either going to ride this all the way to the ground, or you're going to get out now. And I chose to get out now. I didn't know what to do at that point, but I had accumulated quite a bit of savings. So I had some money, and I had a little taste of like, a decent lifestyle, like, cause I was making, 6 figures for several years. And then just by like happenstance, again, I got involved with Hype energy drink. Some of the guys that were in charge of the distribution, basically for the US, they were right here. They were getting it right out of the Long Wharf food terminal right there. And I just created an LLC, bought a van, had the van wrapped, bought a crap ton of inventory, and then I just hit the road. And it was very, very, very impulsive, like very impulsive. I didn't do any like research. I didn't spend a lot of time, crunching numbers, so to speak. And I like was out there like door-to-door sales, man, like going to gas stations, gyms, nightclubs, whatever I could do, doing promotions. We got a couple good accounts. Like I had a a couple like gentlemen's clubs that were buying a ton of it because Hype, the energy drink, if you remember, maybe you'll remember it by the shot glass. They had like a patented shot glass that looked like a little hourglass. You would put the energy drink in the bottom half, and then you would pour the spirit into the top, and they would be separate.
Yes.
So that was the Hype shot. Yes. So those were super popular in the nightclubs and the gentlemen's clubs. So we did a lot of fun promotions. I was actually even in Jay-Z's 40/40 club. I had gone out there and just knocking on doors, and they were a good customer for a while. But at the time, you know, if you remember, gas was like almost $5 a gallon. I was driving so many places, putting so much wear and tear on the vehicle, and just not making enough margin to like really be profitable. So I did that for a while, and then eventually I hooked up with a distributor in Stratford who was like a private distributor. He had his own little warehouse, and he would go similar to what I did, but he had a whole catalog of products that he was selling, which makes it a lot easier to make money. And I forget exactly how I met him, but he wound up like just giving me a job with him basically in exchange for my accounts, basically the established accounts that I had already created. So it was just awful. It was awful. It was crap pay. I was lugging stuff around warehouses and stuff. And then this is, you know, I was in my 30s at this point, you know, just like, what the hell is going on? And then I think I got into, it was life insurance. I went straight from there into life insurance. And the way that happened was I ran out of money. I had no more money, and I was on the verge of being broke. And so I called my life insurance agent and told him that I couldn't afford the policy anymore, basically. And he was like, what the hell happened? He's like, you were killing it. And I said, yeah. I said, well, things changed. You know, I left the business. I tried something for myself. It didn't work out. And he basically was like, dude, you're a great salesman. Why don't you come and like work for Northwestern Mutual, and, you know, you'll do great. I'll have you meet the GA, the general agent. And I went there, and it was just like, I didn't want to be a life insurance agent, but I didn't really have many choices, you know, and I had to continue to provide and pay my bills and put food on the table, and so to speak. So I got licensed for life, accident, and health. I was studying to get like financial advisor certifications, but then I just couldn't process it. I hated it so much, man. So I worked for Northwestern for about a year and a half, and it was an eat what you kill environment. So it's completely commission based. I had a couple, what I thought was going to be like really good policies that were going to pay me handsomely, just fall through for whatever reasons. So those kind of hurt and kind of put me again in this, like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. Like, what kind of life is this? Right. And then, after that, I went and a friend of mine had an eyebrow business where he had studios. Well, he had one studio at the time that focused on like eyebrow waxing and threading, and eyelash extensions, and, you know, cosmetic stuff. And I just started with him by like just kind of like looking into his current business. And this was like a little side business for him. This was not his main thing. And so I went in and I met the girls that worked at the shop, and I tweaked a few things, and I saw some opportunities that, you know, could be improved upon, you know, and it made sense, and it wound up making a difference financially. And then he proposed that we open more locations, and that he would bring me on with a full-time salary. And I was like, okay, it all happened at the right time, because I didn't have anything else going on, and I didn't know where to go. And this felt it was a very like entrepreneurial kind of role for me, because I was like in the car driving around looking at retail spaces and negotiating like deals, and it was cool, but I was getting paid. And so we were together for like 2.5, almost 3 years doing that. We opened 2 additional locations, so we had 3 locations, and they were doing great. We were on the verge of like franchising, and we actually had meetings with a franchise firm, had a whole like handbook. I created a handbook. And then him and I just had a blowout one day. Things went sideways. I was just like, all right, I've been doing this for a long time. I need a little more kind of like security. You know, I needed to feel a little more comfortable with my position, and my equity, so to speak, of something that hadn't necessarily been the pie hadn't fully been baked yet, but I wanted to make sure that I was going to have my share when it was done. And the conversation just went sideways, and we were both two hotheads, and we went at it, not physically, but it was an argument, and it just ended. I just was like, I gave up at that point. I just walked out. And I hope I'm not being too long-winded, but I'm just
great. Yeah,
just trying to give you a really
this is exactly what it's about.
Cool. So I'm just trying to give you a very like a detailed picture of how it all came to this.
Yeah.
So I left that business and went home that day and started putting my resume on, what is it, Monster? Remember Monster.com?
Yeah.
So some of those job sites, and then within a day or two, I got a hit from CVS Pharmacy. They were looking for an assistant store manager in Newtown, and I'm like, I live East Haven, New Haven. I was like, Newtown. Ugh. There's no easy way to Newtown.
Nope.
Yeah. So I'm like, but it was good pay. It was benefits. It was all the things that I kind of needed. So again, do I want to be a CVS store manager? And I didn't at that time. No, I still don't. But, it was a job. Mm-hmm. And as men, sometimes we have to just suck it up and do the thing, So I took the job, and it was awful. Like I expected, some of the people there were fun and quirky, it was really a retail environment, and I learned a few things.
Were you the one who came up with the idea for the long receipts?
Yeah, that was my idea. You're welcome. So I worked there for a short time. After I trained in Newtown, and then they sent me to Ridgefield, which is even further. Mm-hmm. And I was working in Ridgefield, and I want to say it was November or December of 2013. And I just had gone through some real up and down personal stuff, in relationships, and just a lot of that punch in the gut type stuff that really sets you back and kind of makes you question everything, and who are you, what are you doing, those the existential crisis kind of what is my life right now. So I had one of those days, that was a culmination of many years and months of just bullshit.
Yep. And
it happened, and it was I said, it was a punch in the gut, but it was this time it was we make mistakes, right? You make errors, bad choices and stuff, and sometimes something bad will happen to you. It'll be a little setback, whatever. But I feel that was the one that hurt bad enough to initiate a change in at least my thinking. You know what I mean? The behavioral changes and, morality and ethics and all those things that lead to bad decisions and a lapse in judgment. Those are complicated. Those take a long time. But I felt at least right at that moment I had enough, so I decided something needed to change, and I needed to figure it out yesterday, and I wound up getting fired from the CVS, not for anything too serious, but I left a shift early one night. I was just mentally checked out. Yeah. I left a shift early, and I put a shift supervisor who was there doing a truck unload, an inventory overnight. And I left her in charge of the store, and I said, just lock up. She knew what to do. She was there 5 years longer than I was. And when I got to work the next day or the next shift, whenever it was, a couple days, I manually changed my shift, but not for the pay, but just so that the store manager, I was the assistant manager, the store manager didn't see that I left early and asked me questions, because why would you leave a shift supervisor in charge? I was just trying to avoid a conversation. Yeah. I was on salary. Yeah. I wasn't trying to steal an hour of work.
I get it.
And that day when I came in, the following shift, there was 4 people in the office, including my manager. And she was like, oh, I think his name was Brian, if I remember, irrelevant, but loss prevention. Mm-hmm. And this dude, I want to laugh at him right now still. I wish I can call him. I wish I knew his full name so I could just call him and be like, you loser. He was left early the other night. Like it was like a big caper.
Yeah.
1 hour, like that I like tried to get like paid for or whatever. Like, and I was just like, okay. As soon as he said that, I knew where it was going. And I was just like, I was like, you're doing me, in my head, I'm going, you're doing me a favor if you fire me, just so you know, just please do it, please. And so, sure enough, he fired me. They let me go. And they were like, yeah, we can't, we don't have tolerance for that. And I was like, it's no problem. I understand. I don't have anything else to say. It's fine. Okay. And I just grabbed my stuff and I drove home. I think the following night, I had a conversation. It was a Christmas party, my cousin's company Christmas party. And I had a conversation with my uncle. He was like, you should have been an actor. And I'm like, an actor? He was like, should have gone to Hollywood. He's like, you got a lot of charisma. You're really funny. And I'm like, I was like, yeah, if I did, I was like, I'm not ready to do that now. I was like, I'm in my 30s now. I'm like, it didn't really appeal to me that much anyway, but I was like, I could see it, but now's not the time. Maybe 10 years ago, maybe. And he was like, why don't you take a personality test? So he was in the Army, and he said they used to give the guys leaving the Army personality tests, and the tests that they would issue them also, it linked them with like career paths. So like it gave you like an analysis of your personality and then like typical careers that like pair well with that personality.
I did one in high school. I remember.
Okay. So I had never done one. So I did this, right? And I'm reading ENFJ, I think. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but ENFJ was my personality code. And as I'm reading what the description of ENFJ is, it's like someone's reciting my like life story to me, basically.
Wow.
And I was like, this is me. This is me. This is me. This is so accurate. Wow. Like I wasn't expecting it to be like so accurate. And then I got to like the career part, and it was like 70 choices ranked in the highest, like ranking to the lowest, down at the very low part of it, like maybe like almost last, like in the bottom 5 was retail, which was what I was doing, right before this test. And so number 1 was actor. And I swear it was actor. And I was like, wow, I screenshot it and I sent it to him, and I was like, are you psychic? And he's like, no, but it's like, I told you, like, he's like, I know these things. Cause I guess he did this for a while with guys. He was helping guys like leave the Army. And number 2 was news anchor, which was hysterical to me because of the anchor man and all that shit. Yeah. And then number 3 was artist, and number 4 was teacher. And artist and teacher really resonated with me. I was always creative and artistic growing up. I always drew, and my mother just recently found like these big drawing pads, like big pads that kind of flip over, that I had when I was like, 10, 11, 12 years old. And I would draw like Looney Tunes characters. I was always good at drawing like from like if I look at something, I could draw it, but I struggled with like drawing out of my head, if that makes sense.
I'm very, very similar.
Okay. So yeah. And then like in my 20s, I was like making my own clothes, like designing my own clothes, like just like, I just couldn't find like the right style shopping. So I would like make my own shit. So I was always like artistically inclined and creative. Teaching resonated with me because I've always had just a natural instinct to just like help and like, tutor and try to improve somebody else's experience or something. That's always just been natural to me. And those 2 resonated with me. And then, I can't even remember anything beyond that because I got stuck on artist and teacher. Those were the ones. And I'm like, how do I make money as an artist and a teacher? Because you always hear the struggling artist. Yep. And I didn't see myself as some like canvas painter in the warehouse. You know what I mean? I just didn't know at that moment. I didn't know what it meant to be an artist for a living, like, Mm-hmm. And then, through a series of, I don't know, reflective like days of just like, putting all the dots together of my past, relationships, experiences. Hairdressing was one of those things that was like, I always liked being around hairdressers. My mom was a licensed hairdresser, but she never really like practiced, but she got her cosmetology license as a young woman, and it was kind of like in the blood, so to speak, So And then I had some ex-girlfriends that were hairdressers, and I would go to the shows and stuff. And it was always appealing to me. It always felt like kind of like a rock star type of, environment. Very cool, a lot of good looking people, very trendy, fashionable. And I thought maybe hairdressing, and it still at that point wasn't like a conviction. It wasn't until I went to one of the schools. I went to the Paul Mitchell School.
Is that where you ended up getting your license?
Yeah, North Haven. So I went to the Paul Mitchell School in North Haven, and I went on a tour. And 30 minutes later, I enrolled.
Wow.
I just was like, these are my people. They were like fucking dancing around in the place. There was like so much good energy. Everybody was smiling. Everybody was good looking, dressed nice. Like, it was great. And I signed up. And I had to fill out a financial aid application a student loan application, because I had gone to college previously, so I was no longer eligible for financial aid. I was every bit in need of financial aid at that point, but couldn't get it. So she did the paperwork for me. This was all right then and there, like right after the walkthrough, like I didn't skip a beat. And so the lady was like, all right, so you're approved for this much, which means you'll have this much of a balance. And then you have to pay that before like your credits are released and like you could graduate. And I was like, well, how much is it? She was like $7,200. And I'm like, all right, so I owe $7,200 out of pocket. And then there's like an additional like 14 or 15,000 in loans. So it was like 20 grand roughly to go to school. And I didn't have any money at that point, but I didn't have any doubt that I could do it. So I was just like, no, I'll do it. She's like, are you sure? She's like, it's going to be like $600 a month or whatever, 6, 7. I forget exactly, but it was significant.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
what year was this, by the way?
That meeting happened in 2013.
Okay.
And then I started school like first week in January of 2014. So I said yes. And she signed me up. And I went home and I immediately started applying for night jobs, like bartending again. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going back behind the bar somewhere, because I'm not going to school part-time. I'm 35. I'm almost positive I was about to be 36. If I'm doing the math right. I don't fucking know. I was born in 1978. So January 13th was my birthday. Yeah. And I was enrolling in school on like January 4th or something like that. Early January. And I had to come up with my first monthly payment, which was basically going to put me at like a zero balance in my bank account. I'm dead serious. I had no money. Yeah. Like zero. And so I applied at a bunch of different jobs, and I was down here in New Haven at Geronimo. And I met with the lady Sonia, who was a friend or maybe a cousin of a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And he put in a word for me. I met with her, and I had a few interviews. They're not with them, just that one meeting with her, but I had a few different interviews. But Geronimo was where I wanted to work. I felt like it was the right brand of bar scene for me, whatever.
It's a great place too.
It was awesome.
Great food,
yeah, I had a good time. Yeah. So this is rather like, I'm trying to find the right adjective or word, but it was the night before I was starting school, and I had to bring a check. And that was basically going to wipe me out. And I haven't heard back from anybody yet. So I don't have a job yet. Damn. Yeah. And I'm going to school Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5. I think Saturday might have gotten out. No, I think it was 9 to 5 every day. Mm-hmm. And I have my phone in my hand, and I'm at my computer, and I'm still looking for jobs. And I'm like typing a text out to my buddy, who's the cousin of the woman at Geronimo, who I interviewed with. Like, hey man, you want to nudge her or like see what's going on, whatever? And I hadn't sent it. And my phone's just in my hand, and I'm on the screen, and then my phone starts ringing. This is a true story, I swear. I'm sorry.
I believe it, man. I keep kicking this is how the universe works, man.
Yeah. So my phone rings, and it's a number that I don't have programmed, and I answer it. Hello. Hey, Jason, it's Sonia from Geronimo. How are you? I'm great. How are you? She's like, listen, I'm sorry that took so long. She's like, we just interviewed so many people. She's like, but good news, we want to hire you. And I was like, dude, I can get emotional, like
Dude,
even thinking about it.
I
Like,
can feel your heart probably sank in that moment.
yeah, like literally hours before school started, she was like, "Could you start this Wednesday?" And I'm like, "This is Monday night." I'm like, "Yes." What do I have to do? She's like, "I just need you there by 5:30. School ends at 5
Of course.
in North Haven." So I'm in North Haven, New Haven, 12, 13 minutes if there's no traffic, tops, right? It's not a bad drive. But all day in school on my feet doing hair, you know, wasn't thinking of it like this at the time because it just didn't matter because I hadn't done school yet. I was about to, and I needed the money and I needed the job. So I just said yes to whatever. She could have told me I had to work like 12-hour shifts, 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. and I would have done it. But she said, "Yeah, I need you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night." I'm like, "Oof, okay, we're doing this." All right. So Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5, Wednesday through Saturday, 5:30 to 2, 3, 4 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah. And I just said yes. And I wrote the check and I knew I was going to go to work that night, that Wednesday, and make money. And for the first 2 weeks, I had to do like training, like service bar training, learning all the recipes and like just like in the trenches, right? So I had bartended for many years before that. So it was just a matter of learning the recipes. And then, I was off and running. But great. I made so many friends. I had so many people that worked at Geronimo come into the school and like get their hair done and cut. It was just, by the third week, I was making like $1,000, $1,100 a week cash.
Nice.
Like 3 weeks in, I was able to I was making more money than I was making with any of the jobs previously.
I need to get a job at Geronimo's.
I know. Yeah, it's amazing how much money you can make behind the bar at a good bar. So the money was great. It was just exhausting. My legs, man, the hamstrings, the calves, like you're just constantly leaning with your legs extended. It's a lot. It's a lot to be on your feet, And I don't know, probably around the 6-month mark, I was just like, it was starting to like take a toll on me. Like it was physically noticeable, like that I wasn't getting sleep. I was like getting real thin. I wasn't working out because I didn't have any freaking
no time.
Yeah, I had no time or no energy
or whatever.
Yeah, and then I made it all the way through. School ended.
How many weeks was that?
It was from January of 2014 till I graduated early March 2015.
Oh, so it's a year and change in school. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was like 15 months, but I don't want to say perfect attendance, but it was perfect attendance. I never missed a day. I never missed a day. And in school, being the 35, 36-year-old, whatever it was, there wasn't many people that were older than me. I don't think maybe one, and that was a night school student. Like I was the oldest person in the school. But I had to I had some mileage behind me, with like careers and jobs. And I was also a little like desperate to be successful at this point. And so I took it very serious. It didn't matter to me. Hair school, from my experience, was very much like the 13th grade for a lot of these people that were there. It was just like, high school's over. I'm not a traditional college student. I think I'll go get my hairdresser's license. I had done many different things leading up to this. And I also, in your 30s, you know yourself a little better, right? You know the things that you're going to like and not like, and the things you're good at. And, you know a lot of your skills. I feel like when you're 18 and 19, no matter how poised or mature you might be, you still don't fully know yourself yet. You haven't had enough like kicks in the face. You haven't faced enough adversity or, different situations to really kind of like know who you are at that point. Very true.
Very true.
Yeah. So I did everything you could do at school. I won awards. I went, there was an award called the Beacon Award. It was like an editorial photo shoot that was open to nationwide to all cosmetology students. All you had to do was like submit an entry. And I actually was responsible for my school's participation in it because I was in what they call core, which is like your basic training, right? Your first 6 weeks of school. And I told the instructor, hey, do we do Beacon? And I only knew of Beacon because an ex-girlfriend of mine had gone to the same school and she had participated in it. And so I only knew about it through that. And I mentioned it. And the instructor, like, I kind of felt like she pretended to know what it was, but she really didn't. I was like, well, could we look into that? I was like, I'd love to participate in that. And then sure enough, she took it to like, the other people at the school. And then we had a whole day where everybody in the school that wanted to participated. So the whole school was just buzzing. We had models, people from outside school were there. Like, I had 3 of the best looking people that I know. I just was like, please, 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 please just come to school. Let me do something on you. Right. So, in the rules of this contest, you could have assistance, like you could have help.
Yeah.
So I just looked for like, the most talented instructors and the most talented other hairstylists there. And I got them to help me make these looks. And anyway, like 2 months later, they announced the winners and I was one of the winners. So it was a big group of kids. It was like 250 or 300 kids, but it was nationwide, and it was like you got a trip to Las Vegas and you got to go be part of this big like 2-day seminar with all these like successful hair industry people. And I got to meet Vidal Sassoon's daughter, Eden, was a big like spokesperson in the industry. So I got to meet her. We became friends. We hung out. Like it was a really cool experience. And that just really charged me up, like motivated the shit out of me to be like, when you go to an event like that and you're in Vegas at like the Mandalay Bay and there's 5,000 hairdressers, it's like an army of like black clothing and like rock and roll hair and just a really cool environment. And it just really kind of like charged me. And I'm like, oh, this is what I need. This is the type of hairdressing career that I could like see for myself. And so I came back to school and it was just like, all right, I'm in. I'm all in. This is what I want. And so I did everything you could do at school. I did all the honors programs. I made dean's list. I had a phone call from the dean of the students, like Wynn Clayball. He's like Paul Mitchell, John Paul DeJorio, his partner for the schools, called me personal like voicemail. He left me. It was just really, really cool. And so then I finished school in 2015 in March and then hit the ground running. I got a few different jobs at a few different salons and, took my lumps, so to speak, in the first couple like months. And then, it wasn't long after that I came up with my idea for my salon. That was a pretty wild time from right after school to the point of me coming up with the brand Skulll & Combs. Just came up as a name one night. Like I was just like, I need a brand. It was really searching for like an Instagram name. I had picked Radical Jason in the school, and I just kind of stuck with that. And then I was kind of feeling like it might be cheesy, so then I was like exploring like new ones. And Skulll & Combs came to me, and I think part of that, I don't know if you know this or not. Not a lot of people do, but the name of Geronimo, the bar. So
no, I don't.
Okay, so over here, the Skull and Bone Society from
Absolutely,
Yale
on High Street. Yep.
Okay, so it's right around the corner from there. I don't know if you know this story, but this is I'm pretty sure you could Google fact check this. Sorry,
No, you're all good.
you could probably
you can sit back and I just wanted to bring the mic closer. You're fine.
You could probably Google this or fact check it. Geronimo. I don't want to I don't know if I'm like he was an Indian, a Native American like warrior or commander or whatever.
It sounds like a god or a leader. Or
he was a very famous like native who was, I guess.
Isn't that what you say when you jump into the pool, like Geronimo?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, yes. So the legend has it that a couple active duty military, I don't know if they're Army or probably Army, were Skull and Bones members from Yale. They were stationed somewhere where they knew that Geronimo himself was buried. They, in a secret mission, exhumed the remains of Geronimo and his heirlooms that he was buried with and stole them and brought them back to Yale.
What?
Yeah. So from what I've read and heard, they still have them and they used them for like ceremonial rituals and such.
Yale has a dark history, so I do not doubt that story.
Yeah. This is all hypothetically speaking. So there's articles that you could find. There's nothing too recent, but when I did search it, I did find something. I think it might have been the New York Times, where the ancestors of Geronimo, like descendants, have been in like litigation with Yale for years to try and get it back. So that it kind of like verifies that it's like real. I guess nobody from Yale actually acknowledges it.
Of course they're not.
But I think that was where the name kind of came from. Like, because they were around the corner from Skull and Bones on High Street and such. But another little caveat is that I don't remember the exact year, but it's been about 10 years now, maybe more than that. I became a Freemason. Mm-hmm. So I belong to the Hiram One Lodge in New Haven, right off Humphrey and Whitney Ave. And that was a very cool experience getting into that. And I looked at that path more as I was just very curious and very like information hungry and looking for like more enlightenment and enrichment, like spiritually, and, you know, just kind of digging into something more ancient and historic and just very like, you know, mysterious. And it just provoked the hell out of me. And I wanted to be a part of it. And so I got involved and I was accepted in. I went through all the rituals to become a Master Mason. And it was very cool. The history, the lessons, the information. It's just a brotherhood, really. You know, at the Blue Lodge level, which is what the standard like Masonic lodge is referred to as a Blue Lodge. A lot of just like charity work, just general like, you know, camaraderie, hanging out, like brotherhood. Mm-hmm. As you go up the rankings or whatever, technically speaking, there's not anything higher than a Master Mason. Everything else is kind of like
wasn't there a Grandmaster?
Yes. So everything after Master is voluntary. So Master Mason kind of grants you access to all the, you know, lodges and meetings and, you know, ceremonies and stuff. But if you want to go into a different, I guess we can call it like a branch of Masonry, like the Scottish Rite, the York Rite, the Knights Templar. These are all separate like branches with all different lessons and degrees and rituals, and they're all very, very separate with different stories and different history. And they're only available to you after you become a Master Mason. So you can go these routes where you can get up to what you've heard of like a 33rd degree.
33rd degree, yep.
So to the best of my understanding is that you can go to 32 voluntarily, like by taking all the rituals and such. But 33rd, you have to kind of be like, to use Skull and Bones terminology, you have to be tapped. Mm-hmm. Like somebody's got to like select you.
Interesting. Or
like nominate you for your 33rd. I never got past the Blue Lodge stuff, only because I was really going like continuously or consistently, I'll say, for like a year or two. Mm-hmm. You know, it was twice a week, and then this whole hairdressing journey and all that's kind of like started, and my life just got so consumed with like figuring stuff out professionally and personally that I just didn't have time for it. So I renew my dues card every year, and I'm still a member, but I haven't gone to the lodge in many years. But
good to know.
Yeah.
So let's keep it. Let's go back on track with the story there. So Skull and Combs name, I think it made a lot of sense. I love the name. Thanks. Actually, before I even knew who you were, or our intertwined, dimensions of worlds, how our kids both go to the same school.
Sure.
I ran into you. I was like, I feel like I've seen this guy before.
Yeah.
Anyways, the name is great. I was so blown away the fact, one, you got the Instagram handle. How the hell no one had that already to exist?
My thoughts exactly.
The name made total sense with New Haven. Mm-hmm. I knew that I could, based on hearing it, we actually walked by your spot. We were going to Delania's when they were over on State Street right there.
I miss the old Delania.
Yep. Well, we were driving by Delania's, and I go, Skull and Combs. I was like, that's a genius freaking name. Mm. And then figured out what it was, and Salon, and you guys weren't open at this time. It was like 8 o'clock at night or something.
Sure.
But great name, great branding. So let's talk about how that came to that and how that got started.
Sure. So to backtrack slightly, when I finished school, hairdressing school, I started, my first job was at a very high-end salon in Darien. And I'll leave the name out of it if it's not important, but I was working there as an assistant. And again, here I find myself making minimum wage. I think it was $9 an hour at that time, and driving to Darien, 4 days a week, and still bartending. I had worked there for about 30 days. It was a very busy salon. It was a lot of people, maybe like it had to be close to 20 stations. It was big. And the stations were laid out like in a half of a circle. Like the room was like circular. And so it was like station, all spread out. Very uppity, pretentious, just fancy, right? A lot of like, white marble and like, just very like.
It's Darien.
Yeah, it was luxurious looking salon. And I thought at the time that was the type of like, environment I wanted to be in. Well, the people are the biggest thing. You know what I mean? The personalities and the culture are going to be the most important things for, I think, anybody in any environment. You know what I mean? Any office, salon, whatever. We're tribal, right? Like we want to be around people that, we can like get along with and that we assimilate and associate with. And I'm pretty like malleable when it comes to like people. I can get along with a lot of different types of people. And I didn't not get along with people there, but some of them were just like, like what the hell? Yeah, what the hell are you talking about? Like, it was weird. There was one guy there who was the resident barber who I really like, I took to. He was very funny. He was quirky, and he was a very good barber, very fast. And so he was great to learn from. So I would kind of just shadow him a lot of times, and then, in between shampooing clients and, just doing regular assisting duties. I was very like anxious and eager to get started though. You know what I mean? Because I had finished school. At such a, I guess like a high level, you know what I mean? Like I made Dean's List, honors, all those like fun things. And, thought that I had this big bright future in front of me as far as like hairdressing went. And then I got into the salon environment and I'm like, I'm just a nobody, I'm just like a 36-year-old assistant, maybe 37 at that point, a 37-year-old assistant. Yep. And I'm like, I'm just chomping at the bit, trying to like get my feet wet here and get going. Can't work very long for $9 an hour. So long story short, about maybe 6 weeks after I got the job there, maybe a little longer than that, maybe 2 months. It was a busy Saturday, and this is a hysterical story. I go out and tell this story a lot when I teach, because I'm teaching sometimes a lot of new students or just hairdressers that are like, a little new. So it's a busy Saturday. Everybody's fully booked in this salon, and you got all the chairs going, right? So it was just a lot of action happening. And I guess some guy comes in and he needs a haircut, doesn't have an appointment, doesn't want to take no for an answer. So the girls at the desk are doing like, pardon me, everything they can to accommodate this guy. And it's just like, they're going up to like every stylist, like, hey, you have time during your color process, so you don't want to take the haircut. And like everyone's just like, no. So nobody wanted to do it.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to do it. And then they got to Vlas, who was the barber who I was like, always kind of like shadowing. And he would take 25 haircuts to 30 haircuts a day. It was wild, man. And honestly, I still don't think I've ever seen anybody like just so robotically cut hair like that. Just very fast and like robotic is the only way I could describe it. And he was just like, no, I don't have time. He's like, tell Jason to do it. And I was like, me? He's like, do it. Come on. Because he had 2 stations. He was so busy. I
was about to say, where's the chair?
He had 2 stations. So his second station was just like an on deck chair, basically. Because he was so like robotic. He would just have this guy get up, boom, this guy sit, and like just keep going.
Yep.
And so he puts the guy in my chair. They put the guy in my chair, or that chair, and I go in the back and I got my stuff and I'm setting up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to do my first haircut. So now I finally like get eyes on the guy, and he's weenie is like the only word. He's a fucking weenie. Like he is such a weenie, part of my mouth, but he's such a weenie. And I'm like, oh no, like a weenie. Like it couldn't just be like a normal dude. He was like dressed in like windbreaker pants with like a tight Under Armour, like, you know, like the nylon kind of like workout fit, super tight, but like zero muscle, hair, like more hair than you have on your head coming out of his like sleeves, like just the hairiest arms you ever saw, crap hair on his head. And I'm like, oh God, just really like smaller in stature, like, and I'm like pretty big, and it's like towering over this guy. And I'm like, oh, how are you, sir? And he's pissed off because now it's been like 15 minutes of like, you know, just forth. Tense, like, you know, could you do it or not? Like he was just very like cocky about the whole thing. And so I'm just trying to like be super friendly. It's my first haircut, bro, out of school anyway.
Yeah.
My first professional haircut. And he says, I asked him how he wants to like, you know, cut it. And he says, just make it shorter, but don't use the machine. And I'm like, oh, like
no clippers.
I can't use the clippers. Now, to a non-hairdresser or barber listening, cutting all the hair on the sides and everything with only a comb and scissor is like it's a whole art form in itself. It takes a long time to really develop that hand-eye coordination, that fluidity with your rhythm of closing the scissor and moving the comb. Like it's not easy. It really is not. I mean, and it's just like anything else. Some people get better at it faster than others, but it is a masterful skill.
There was a guy when I was a kid. I used to get my hair cut by him. I don't know if he's still around, but it was a friend of a father. It was a friend's father.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go to him, and he did that. And he just, the way his hand was like gracefully
Mm-hmm.
move up and down.
Yeah, that is an art.
Yeah.
And it takes many, 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 many years to master that.
I remember I've never had a haircut like that ever.
Yeah. It has a very different effect on the hair. It's so much softer, more natural finish to a haircut when you cut the whole thing with scissors. Anyway, so skillfully, I'm not ready to do this skill-wise. I went to cosmetology school, so I wasn't a barbering student. Any of the barbering specific stuff, like we only had, so put it in perspective, we had 15 months of school, we had 2 weeks of barbering. So very small percentage of our time was spent on barbering. Any of the extra barbering stuff that I learned was at like barbershops during my off time. I would go to barbershops, and some of my friends would come with me to like my buddy's barbershop, and I would cut their hair and he would help me, you know, show me tips and tricks. So this guy says scissors only. Now that in itself is enough to like make you, you know, crap your pants as a new hairstylist or barber. His hair texture and the length that it was at already were also just, this was a nightmare situation developing, because he had very, like, it looked like it was colored hair. Like, so it was gray. So the gray hair gets a more wiry type of texture, more coarse texture. And his hair was definitely colored, and it was thin. So the type of hair, when like your hair is very dense on the side. So if I took scissors to your hair, you don't see every little, you know, step or notch in the hair if there's an imperfection in like your cutting technique. In somebody who's got very low density, and it's just like the hair is there, but it's not very like thick, if you just misstep even a little bit with a scissor, you see like the step or like the hole. Ooh. So it's very hard to cut scissor over comb hair on somebody whose hair is very like sparse like that. That's the type of hair he has. And I'm like, this is absolute nightmare fuel. Now I'm just going into full like armpit sweat. My brain is like not firing. I'm hearing like I'm hearing sounds, but like not words. I'm not kidding, man. I'm making it like
in a movie. Like
I'm not kidding. It was like that stressful because I'm like, now I'm like, there's nowhere to fucking hide. I have nowhere to go. I have to do this right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to make small talk with him now as I'm like fiddling with my tools, just like trying to just kill time to get my brain to like just tell me what to do. I didn't know where to start, what to do. So I'm like, so how's your day going? It's fine. Like, no banter, no question back. I'm like, okay. So he goes, how long have you been cutting hair for? Because he had waited so long, he knew that like, oh God, who are they giving me? Like, you know what I mean? If everybody's busy, who's this guy? You know, yeah. I change everyone's oil. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I see the hair on the ground.
Yeah, exactly, man. So I was like, oh, not very long, but you're in good hands. Like, ha ha. And he goes, I could tell. Oh, I was like, literally, man. And I'm like, So I'm just like, okay, whatever. So in a typical scissor over comb haircut, 99.9% of the times you're going to isolate the top of the head, like at the round of the head going up is called the parietal ridge. You're going to section the hair off at the parietal ridge, clip that out of the way, and then you're going to do the sides first, sides and back first. And then eventually you'll unclip the top and bring that down and marry everything together. Well, he had no hair to separate, first of all. So I should have just gone in and just, started on the sides, but I didn't know what to do. So I just go to the top of his head and I take some hair. Literally, I didn't even shampoo, spray with water, nothing that you should be doing. I'm not doing. I just grab a piece of hair on the top of his head and I go to cut. And then I stop myself and I'm like, oh wait, I'm on the wrong side. You should always start a haircut from your dominant side. So right side for me. So I'm on the left at this point. So I'm like, and I turn around and I go here and I just grab a fucking piece of hair and I go, and I just snip it off. Not a lot of hair, but I'm just like, I gotta cut fucking something. So I just cut. And he went, stop. No, oh no. I'm like, he's on to me. He knows that I don't know. So I went, oh my God, are you all right? I was like, did I cut you? And he goes, no, you don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, oh God. I was like, you're right. No, I didn't say you're right, but he was right. Yeah. And I was like, sir, you have to calm down. Like, give me a chance. I didn't even like start yet. And he's like, no, you don't know what you're doing. I want him to cut my hair. And he pointed at the guy, Vlas, who was working next to me. And so now Vlas is like, he's going a mile a minute on his client. He's like, he knows what's going on, but he's like trying to ignore it. And he said, everything all right over there? I was like, no. Like, are you seeing this? Like, he's like, I want you to cut my hair. He doesn't know what he's doing. And I'm like, sir. He's like, no, literally like a kid. Child. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna just excuse myself here. I was like, Vlas, I was like, I don't know what you want to do. I was like, but I'm going back. So I just put my shit down on a tray and I walked in back. And now when he yelled at first, it was like everybody in the place was like, everybody looked because of like he made a scene. Yeah. So I'm like mortified. And I'm the biggest guy in the room at this point, and I can't like hide from it anywhere. I'm just like, all right, let me just run him back. So I ran him back and I sat down and I'm just like, did that really just happen? Wow. Now, backtrack. I went to Paul Mitchell School. I got Dean's List, honors. I won a Beacon Award. I had all these like accolades and all these like things. And the first haircut that I got presented to me, I bombed and I couldn't do it. And I was just like, I'm a fake. I'm a fucking fake. Like, I don't even know how to cut hair. I just did 15 months in school, got all these awards, thought I was a big hot shit, and I got literally annihilated by someone who's 5'1". Yeah, he killed me, bro. Killed me. And to this day, I wish I knew where he lives because I'd go egg his house. He made me feel that low. And I was like,
but it probably that moment built you.
That was one of the key moments in my hairdressing career because I was always like athletic and competitive growing up. And like, I'm like a guy, you know what I mean? I want to compete. I want to like, see how I measure up. And so it was like, I want to be a good barber or a good hairdresser. And like, I don't want to be like average or just like another face in the crowd. I want to be somebody. I want to do something with myself. And that really just set. I mean, you want to talk about lighting a fire under your ass? I'm like, I thought, wow, I actually did it. I went to school 15 months. I worked 4 nights a week. I made it. Like, wow. And now I'm like, it's just fucking getting started.
Yep.
Like, I am just getting started. I know nothing about cutting men's hair. Apparently, not everybody's going to be a number 2 on the side in a scissor cut top and a walk in the park. You're going to have people with shit hair that want complicated haircuts. It's just a matter of a law of large numbers until it happens to you. And I'm so lucky that it happened on the first one, because it was like God himself put this guy in my chair to tell me, you better hurry up. You better go faster, because this is what's going to happen to you. And I'm like, wow. So everybody comes in the back one at a time. They're like, are you all right? And I'm like, get away from me. Literally, leave me alone. Like, I'm going to lose my mind. I can't even believe that just happened. What happened? And I'm like, it just, everything, so many different things happened that I couldn't even say, like, oh, he was an asshole. Like, no, he was right. I really didn't know what to do. So as rude and as cocky as he was right in the fact that I was about to fuck his whole life up with a worst haircut he ever got, if he let me continue. And it didn't happen, thankfully. But I realized that the track or path that I was on at that place was not going to be expeditious. It was going to be very slow and tedious, and I just didn't have time for that. So I took the train a few days a week there, and I was on the train on the way home. I'm just looking for jobs. Number 1, closer to me. Number 2, at places that weren't maybe so bougie or fancy that I can just kind of like get in the trenches like quickly. So I took a job at Supercuts in East Haven.
Oh, yeah.
Right in the Stop and Shop Plaza.
Yep. Trolley
Yeah.
Square.
Yep. And they hired me. They sent me for a week of like cutting education and training, hands-on training, which was still to this day, it was so valuable.
Really?
It was so valuable. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, the thing that Supercuts did for me that school didn't was teach me a very simplistic but systematic way to approach a haircut. And they have their way, their Supercuts way, because it's a franchise and it's built off of duplicity. Everything's got to be duplicatable, right? Well, haircutting is an art, and it's different than making a Big Mac with the same ingredients and the same equipment, just in a different town. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's more simply done. Me teaching you how to do the same haircut that I do, your result is undoubtedly going to be different than mine, just because your eyes are different, your hands are different. You're going to see it differently. And maybe we get close to like the same finished result after a while, but it's going to be very different at first, even if you approach it with the same steps that I teach you, that I do, because it's an art.
Yeah.
So in that sense, they teach you the system, but then there's still going to be a big discrepancy between like skill and like finished results based on the artist and like, you know, like an average basketball player and then like an MJ, you know what I mean? You're going to have big differences in like, you know, the result. So I worked for a week in training, and it was fun because they would do like an open like model call, and it was just free haircuts. And I'd be literally in this like back room in a Supercuts. I forget where it was, maybe Cromwell. So it was just in a back room, which was like a designated like training room. Mm-hmm. And you would just be back there learning the haircut. And then like, they were like, all right, ready? And they would open the door and be like, 20 people would walk in and be like, all right, you go here, you go here. You would just fuck people up for like 2 hours with the haircut that you just learned. And I'm like, this was incredible. It was such an incredible, like all the light bulbs were going off, man. I'm like, oh, that's why you clip over comb. That's why you over direct the hair. It was like stuff that you learned in school from a very like fundamental and foundational perspective. But then when it gets like, it's like when like your mom or your dad told you something like a lesson and you're like, yeah, you know, I get it. And then like it really never like made a difference. And then like your friend's parent told you the same lesson or taught it to you and it just hit differently because you're like, oh, that's what my mom meant when they said that. That's what happened when I was at Supercuts. It was like all this stuff from school got like, boom, like hammered home because of the reinforcement of certain things, but like presented slightly differently. And I was just so eager to like get behind the chair and start cutting hair after that week of training. So I worked full time at the Supercuts in East Haven. I wound up doing, my goal was to do 1,000 haircuts in my first year, which was, I thought was reasonable.
Reasonable, right?
I wound up doing like almost 1,000 in my first 6 months.
Oh.
So I did a little less than 900 haircuts in my first 6 months. Now, by the time I was ready to leave Supercuts, like confidence wise, I would have guys like a whole like queue of people waiting for me on a Saturday morning at Supercuts while there was 3 stylists just sitting there, like not working because they wanted their haircut by me. Yep. So I built up a following where I'm giving a friggin' dope haircut for 15 or 18 bucks, whatever it was. You know what I mean? So I got that confidence, and then I took one more shot with another salon, and it was more of a salon, men's and women's, because I was at Supercuts, I was doing 85, 90% men's haircutting, which I didn't mind. I still, to this day, that's, I probably do 75, 80% men's haircutting still. But I still wanted to do color at that point and work on women's hair and such. So I went to work for a place in Brantford, and it was a small shop, few very friendly people. The owner of the shop, he and I were, we were cut from a similar cloth. He was older than me, but we were very much, 2 peas in a pod, like, and so it was cool. However, a few things happened where I was just like, I don't know about this culture wise, like in the salon, like people were just like, one of the girls was just fucking spying on her fiance, had like spyware on his computer. Like it was just like weird stuff happening in the break rooms. Like a lot of like conversations where I was just like, that's probably not, I'm not a very like appropriate like person. I've never, I'm always just kind of like a jokester, and like, I have a very like, open sense of humor, and I find a lot of things funny. Okay. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. So, I'm not super sensitive to anything really. Right. But it was just like, like I wanted the salon experience to be something so specific, and it just felt like I couldn't find it. So it was during my time there, what really provoked me. Now I had a little bit of skill, a little bit of like mileage under my belt. Like, you know what I mean? All right. I got a little bit of like confidence now that I can cut hair, and just one more salon that's just not getting it done for me, like emotionally, and like I wasn't feeling like I could last long at any of these places. So that's what prompted me to like make my move. All right. So Skulll & Combs came to me one night, just name, and I went, that's got to be, like you said, I said, that's got to be taken. I punched it into Instagram, and it was like, available.
Password entered. Mine now.
So I created a new Instagram account, called it Skulll & Combs. I went immediately, like it was like almost like when that was available, I was like, I have to get everything now. So I got the Twitter and the Snapchat and the Facebook, and then I went for the website, and it wasn't available. But Skulll & Combs Company, which is what I like, intended on calling it anyway, that was available. So I grabbed the full skullandcombscompany.com. And then what I had done was I started Skulll & Combs Instagram as like a share page, just as like a hair page, but I was basically posting other people's work, tagging them, of course, giving them like credit, and just like building my account with like hashtagging and tagging other artists. And then I thought, I need a logo, because I didn't have a logo yet. And so I rough drew out a skull with 2 combs crossed, and I sent it to my buddy who's an artist. And I said, can you make this like, an actual logo, like professional logo? So he was like, sure. He's like, what kind of font you want to use? And I was like, let me do some digging on font. I'll find some font. So I found a cool font, sent him the font. He sent me back a few renditions. And then, before you know it, we had, this is a tattoo, but yeah, we had a rendition of that. And I was like, all right, now I have a logo. And then, so I put the logo up on the Instagram page. And then I was like, I need to make some merch. I was like, hairdressers probably would rock some like Skulll & Combs merch. I thought it was cool. And then I made merch, and I sold some of it, but I gave most of it away just so like,
as you do.
Had a couple like Instagram influencer hair people that have like, several 100,000 followers. Hey, could I send you some stuff? Would you just take a picture of it and post it? And They did. And, just a few posts like that got me like, probably 1,000 to 2,000 followers over like, the course of like 6 months. So I built that up, and then when it was time to like, all right, I got to try and figure out how to open a salon.
All right. So you got the Instagram name. You were, what was the next step?
I made merch. I was making merch and promoting it by like, just sending it to Instagram influencers and so forth. And, just handing it out to other hairdressers and stuff. I didn't make much money back on it. If I broke even, that was, something. But then, about a year after, it was about a year and 8 months or 9 months after school, at that last salon, where I was just like, when the girl brought the double laptop with the spy software in the break room, that's when it was at that point where I was like, I really wish I could like have my own shop and like just invite the right type of people in. And so I didn't have any really like money saved up. I was just kind of like, getting by. And I went onto a commercial real estate website, and I typed in New Haven. Now I gotta backtrack just a moment briefly to put this in better context. I was at Delania one night with Harper, my son, very little. He was like maybe 3. And then, and Kristen, his mom. And we were waiting to be seated at Delania. It was a busy like Friday or Saturday night. And so I'm just got Harper by the hand, and I'm like just walking up and down the sidewalk. We're looking around. And the building which my shop is in now was a business. I think it was called the Serene Spot. It was like I think it was a massage parlor, and it was closed up for the night already. It was early, it was still light out. And I just looked at it, and now I'm already in my mind, I'm already thinking like, I need like my shop. I need a shop. And now I had a friend in East Haven and a friend in Brantford that had their own barbershop. So I didn't want to like, infringe. And I'm like thinking about New Haven, and I'm like, there's nothing in New Haven like what I have in mind for like a hair salon and barbershop, whatever. And I'm like, and there's nobody that I would be infringing on really, that I felt like anyway. It was just vast, right? New Haven's more vast. There's a lot of little neighborhoods and nooks and crannies for me to like slide in there with my own shop and not like feel like I'm, encroaching or infringing on anybody. So I found this spot, and I'm like, look at this place. I'm like, it had all these big windows, and it was just a great, cute little like neighborhood like building. And I'm like,
nice like little walkable path there.
Yeah.
Too.
And I'm like, just people everywhere, man. And I'm like, wow, imagine having like a nice dressed up window storefront like here with a nice cool shop inside. And then, it wasn't a week or two later where I had that moment of like, I need to like at least look and see like what this looks like if I, was to try and do this on my own. And I go to the website, I type in New Haven, like spaces for rent, for lease, whatever. It was the second property listed.
That's that
Yep.
spot.
Serene Spot. Yep. Second one down the list. I went. You want to talk about shit just aligning, man? And I was like, there's no fucking way that's real. I called the number immediately, like literally immediately. Hey, it's Anthony. The guy was super friendly, super nice Italian kid. He was like, yeah, my name's Anthony. I'm the leasing agent. So, the landlords are very sweet people. They're, they're a little older. They're just like, they've been doing this for a long time. They've had, a couple tenants. They're just looking for somebody like who's going to like do something that'll last, right? They want a business like any landlord. They want somebody that's going to get in there and build something that will be successful. And so, could I come see the spot? And he was like, yeah, I can meet you there tonight if you want. And I'm like, say no more. I'll be there whenever you tell me to be. He was like, how about 6? I go down. You walk in the door, and there's just 2 rooms. It was just very like weird layout. Like there was just, you walked in the main door, and then boom, you were met with like another room, like another door. And then you walked around like down a little tiny hallway, and then another door on the side. It was very just like seedy, just like not appealing at all. I was like, oh, because in the window, it was just a giant blind, like a vertical blind.
Okay,
Not,
so you
no,
hadn't
I'm sorry,
seen-
not a vertical blind, like a horizontal blind. You couldn't even see inside.
Oh, so you didn't even see inside. You just imagined the storefront. I thought you had saw the inside already.
No,
Yeah, okay.
no, just the glass in the storefront, like the showcase
Yep.
was just enough to like, it was just had such curb appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got inside, I was like, oh. And then I looked up and I saw that the walls weren't connected to the ceiling. And I was like, oh, these are non-load bearing walls. These are just framed out walls here. So this could be, I said, this could potentially just be a big open room. And not big by any means, but like it could be just one open,
them all
like a
down,
box.
yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, these are non-load bearings that you could just take these right down. And I'm like, okay, so I'll definitely want to do that because I want to make like a little barbershop hair salon in here. He was like, oh, great. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm sure you'd be fine with that. He's like, so I'm like, so how much is he asking? So we went over the numbers and I was like, that sounds really reasonable. Like, I think I could actually do that. So when could I meet the landlords? And he's like, I can have them here tomorrow. They live in Wallingford. And I'm like, okay, do it. So the next night I met him again with the two landlords. It was a husband and wife couple. They're Polish immigrants. They were the nicest people you could ever want to meet. And this was in November, I believe, of 2016. And I told him what I wanted to do. And he was like, yeah. He's like, this could be a great spot for that. He's like, we had a travel agency, we had a yoga studio, and then the massage. He's like, but, yeah, hair salon, barbershop. I'm like, I'm going to have to like go into the floors and do some plumbing for like sinks and stuff. That's cool. He's like, yeah. He's like, no problem. I'm like, okay. And so we made a deal, and he made it even sweeter without me even asking for it. He was like, all right, so it was like early November of 2016. He's like, so we'll sign the lease. He's like, you start the lease January. He goes, you could start construction now, like tomorrow. He goes, we'll start the lease January. He's like, and I'll give you January for free. So you won't have first month's rent until February. And let me to put it in perspective for you, my first month's rent, my first year was less than $1,000 a month.
I wrote that question down. What was he going to ask you for rent for that place? Because that's a prime
It was
location.
$950 a month for my first
I feel
year.
like you could make that in
First year, $1,000 for the second year, $1,050 for the third year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So I said, deal. He pulls out a lease, fills it out. In 20 minutes after meeting him, I had a signed lease for the space for 3 years. So now I have a signed lease for real estate. I have no LLC. I have no bank account.
Did you put a lease under your personal name?
At first, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I have nothing, no business plan, no money. I have literally nothing, but I've secured the spot that I knew would make it work, make this brand I had come to life in New Haven. This was the right spot for it. So I went home that night and I was just like, glowing. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I actually just did this, right? So I signed the lease and took a photo with the keys out in front of the shop before I even had a business bank account, like before I had anything.
I love it.
Yeah, I swear to God. And I went home and I'm like, okay, so I got to go to Wells Fargo tomorrow, who's, that's where I do my banking. And they turned me down for a loan. I had, my credit was fair at best at that point. I had struggled like financially over the last few years. It was just a grind. So some things may have,
understandably,
my credit wasn't destroyed, but it wasn't like, exceptional either. And so Wells Fargo was like, all right, no. So I got a DBA first with the city and then with Wells Fargo, and then eventually got an EIN number and got an LLC and properly did it. And so I was like, okay, now where do I go for money? Like, I don't have any collateral. I don't have like good credit. I'm like, what did I do? And so I went on lendingclub.com. This is not a paid promotion for Lending Club. Proceed at your own risk. But they approved me for a 3-year loan for $15,000, 15. And it was like 14% or 15% interest.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I got affordable rent. I'm going to have $1,000 or so a month for this payment or whatever it was. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm like, I don't know. Is 15,000 enough to open a salon? And anybody that has opened a barbershop or salon will tell you that it's
not even close for the, you can't even buy
it's not enough.
build out.
It's not enough, but here we go. So yes, I accept. All right. Allow a couple days for a transfer of funds, whatever. So I didn't care. I had the keys. I had the keys to this place, bro. And that was it. I'm like, all right, so game on. So I went down there literally with a pair of like canvas gloves, you know, like the gloves, like work gloves.
Yeah.
Stopped in Home Depot. I bought a 3-pound sledgehammer and a pair of like canvas gloves and a bunch of like contractor bags. And I went down there and literally just started knocking the walls down. Like I punched through the first one just as like, you know, the symbolic punched a hole in the first one and then just literally started ripping chunks of sheetrock out with my hands. And then for the 2x4s, I started knocking them with the sledgehammer and shit just crumbled like a house of cards. I was left with a pile of rubble in an hour. I had both rooms knocked completely down. And I was like, here it is, my space. You could see it. I was like so pumped about it. And this is a funny side story. There was the electric that was being used for both those rooms was wired. There was a couple outlets in each room, but it was wired through the 2x4s and then fed to a plug. Like it wasn't like
it was like an extension cord running through the wall.
It wasn't hardwired. It was just wired. The two outlets were wired onto a plug that was plugged into an outlet that was part of the main room. So I can't get all the 2x4s like out because they're all intertwined with this wire. And I just can't figure out like how to get the wire out. And because I didn't notice at first that it was like plugged in because who the fuck, I never experienced that before. So my cousin's husband is an electrician. I call him. I was like, here's my situation. What do I do? He was like, you see the panel? And the panel was right there. So I was like, yeah. He's like, shut everything off. He's like, all right, is everything off? I said, yeah. And he goes, all right. He's like, you got a cutters? And I was like, yeah, I got something to cut with. He's like, all right. He's like, just cut the wire and like, you know, whatever. And I was like, all right. He's like, you're sure everything's off? I'm like, yes. I was like, I just shut everything off.
I gotta know where this is going.
I take the cutter and I cut into the wire and it goes pow, like just a fucking pop of electricity. Like a white flash right in my face. I'm like, whoa, man, what was that? I was like, I shut everything off. I take the cutter and I look at it, bro, it melted.
Oh, yeah.
It melted the blade. And I'm like, that could have been so bad. What the fuck just happened? So I start like, the wire was now cut, but now like, I'm still like, holy shit, what did I just do? Like, I don't want to do anything worse. And so I followed the wire and it was plugged into the fucking wall. And I'm like, still, I shut all the electric off. And so I called him back and I'm like, bro, I was like, it was plugged into the wall. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, the wires that were running through the walls to the outlets was actually plugged into an outlet itself. And he was like, oh my God, who the hell did that? Long story short, he's like, is there another panel? And so I took a picture of that panel and I sent it to him and he goes, yeah, he goes, that's a small panel. He's like, I guarantee there's another panel. Look, go downstairs. So I go in the basement. Sure enough, there's a whole nother panel.
Yep. And that breaker was tripped.
Yep. Yep. So I was like, all right, so now I know better, right? So I wound up getting all that resolved. I made a huge pile of rubble. I started like a rough like sweep, got everything swept up. And then I was like, all right, now how do I get rid of all this shit? Because it was like a lot of stuff, sheetrock and debris and stuff. And I'm like, So I called a childhood friend of mine who I know he's very successful. Him and his brother run a masonry company. Actually, their offices aren't far from here. I called him. I said, you know how I get a dumpster? I just got like, I took a picture of it. I said, I just got to get rid of this shit. I was like, I don't know, like, do I need a permit to put a dumpster? I don't need it. I just need to put this in the dumpster. And like, he's like, can you be there tomorrow morning? I was like, yeah. He's like, 6 a.m. And I'm like, yeah, 6 a.m. He's like, I'll have two guys bring a dumpster. He's like, we're right down the street. He's like, I'll have two guys. They'll help you like get it out. I'm like, dude, thank you. He brought the truck. They dropped the dumpster in a parking spot right outside the shop. In 20 minutes, the three of us had it all cleared out into the dumpster. They loaded the dumpster. He took it off. Didn't charge me a dime to do it. Just
what a gentleman.
Yep. And I'm like, oh my God, man, what a blessing that was. So now I'm like, all right, now what? Definitely need lighting in here. I definitely need more outlets. I need to put probably a 20 amp in the breaker, in the panel. And my cousin's husband, my cousin was like my biggest fan. She was rooting for me. So she was like, Steve, her husband, whatever he needs, just do it. And so he was just like, yes, dear. And he was happy to help. And his neighbor was an out of work, like union electrician.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, Jay, just get all this stuff that I tell you. He's like, and whatever fixtures you're going to get, and tell me when you got it all. Okay. So I went and ordered all the stuff. I got the 2x4 panels and the track lighting and, all the outlet stuff. And then he had to run to Home Depot a couple times. But these two dudes came 2 days in a row for, 4 or 5 hours into the night and wired and electrified my whole entire place and didn't charge me a dime. Yep.
You know some good people, man.
Yep. Now it gets better. Kristen, my father-in-law, carpenter on the side. You know how every firefighter's got a side hustle.
Yep.
He was a carpenter. So he comes and we start doing all the trim work and, chair rail, crown molding, all the painting. Him and I start doing it. Then a few other friends start coming at night, helping me paint. And then my buddy Jamie, who was the bar back at Geronimo, I posted on Facebook. I had all the floors that connect together. I forget what the hell they call them.
We have them in here. What is it called?
Yeah, I can't think of the name of them.
Floating floors. Or
Yeah,
something like that.
So I bought like a brown, enough square footage,
Yep.
and I had them all delivered. Well, I had them at the shop, and I'm like, does anybody know how to put these things together? And the dude was like a carpenter. He's working on Norwalk Hospital at the time. It was fucking cold, bitter cold, all day at Norwalk Hospital on the roof. And he came 2 nights in a row to my shop and put the floors in. I mean, meticulous too. Like they're 7 years. How many feet have touched that room right now? And they're still holding up like they were the day that you put them in. Would not take money from me. I'm just like, what's happening right now? Yeah. Like nobody would charge me. It was like
it's a blessing, man. It sounds like you had there's something, a higher power kind of just directing this happening, all falling into place.
Everybody was rooting for me.
To the help you got. Yeah, man.
So then it came time for like plumbing. Plumbing I had to pay. But this is a really funny story about the plumbing. The guy who came to do the plumbing, he owned a bar in New Haven for a long, long time. And I worked for him even as a bartender at one point. And him and his dad were like plumbers. And I just thought of him. I called him. He was like, yeah, sure. Of course I could help you, right? So I bought 2 used sinks. I swear to God, my first shampoo sinks in New Haven were $150 for both of them. I got them in the basement of somebody's salon that was like 40 years old in Norwalk.
Still there to this day?
No. Yeah, I've upgraded.
Okay.
But those were the sinks that I started out the salon with, right? And so I told him where I needed a sink in the back, the 2 shampoo sinks, the washer, all that stuff, right? So the day they get there to like do all the main like pipes downstairs for the washer and a dryer and all that shit, and then for the shampoo sinks, he leaves the old man, the father, there to like start doing some of like the rough cutting and like getting shit ready while he goes to the plumbing supply store. So I'm upstairs in the shop doing like whatever. I think at the time I was actually stapling the album covers in the bathroom. I have like old vintage album covers like decorating the bathroom wall. And I hear him go, I cut a gas line. I cut a gas line. And he's like yelling, like frantic. And I'm like, oh no, what the fuck does that mean? And at the time, there's a 1-bedroom apartment right parallel to the salon, like behind it. Mm-hmm. And a little old woman was living there. Her name was Karen. So she was home. She never went out. And so I ran around the building. I knocked on her door. I said, Karen, I was like, you got to get out. I was like, he cut a gas line by accident. I was like, I don't know what the hell he's doing. So I go down in the basement and, you could just smell it. And I smelled it. I was like, man, that smells bad. He's like, it's bad. I cut right through it. He's like, I can't find the shut off. And I'm like, like, God. So it's like minutes are going by. And I'm like, we got to find the shut off. He's like, I can't get it. He's like, Nick took the truck. He's got the wrench in the... Bro, total mess. So we're calling Nick. He's not answering. And I'm like, oh my God. Finally, I'm on the sidewalk out in front with the father and Karen. and we're just like, waiting for Nick because he's not answering the phone. And he comes pulling up to the driveway, and he's like, just like waving. I was like, get in the back.
Clueless.
So he runs. He's like, what's going on? I was like, your father cut a gas line. We can't find the shut off. Like nobody, I don't know where it is. I don't have a wrench that big to like shut it off, whatever. So he's like, oh, Jesus Christ. So he runs in the back and he gets a big wrench out of the van and he goes down and he gets it shut off. But it was like 10 minutes, which is an eternity of like gas just spewing out of the line. I'm like,
smell.
yeah, the smell. I was like, any spark of any kind is going to blow the place up. Right? So he gives me the piece of pipe that he cut. He gives it to me and he's like, go to Home Depot, go to the plumbing or the plumbing aisle. Just tell me you need a pipe this size with, it's got to be grooved or whatever they called it. I was like, all right. So I take the pipe, I go to Home Depot, and now a buddy of mine who was supposed to work on graphics and like some graphic design, some artwork, some website stuff for me, he was supposed to be meeting me down at the shop that afternoon. So I'm in Home Depot, I'm in line, and he calls me. I was like, hey man, what's up? I was like, I'm out right now. I'm sorry if I missed you. And he's like, I'll be right back. And he's like, no. He's like, it's all good. He's like, I'm just having a really hard time getting down there. And I'm like, why? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm on State Street in Hamden and they're saying there was an explosion on State Street and it's all blocked off. And I'm like, my fucking heart. I swear I'm not lying, man. You could timeline this. Like he called me literally a half an hour after I left the shop telling me he couldn't get down there because there was an explosion on State Street. I was like, you have to be kidding me. I was like, Joe. I was like, dude, I'm literally in Home Depot getting a pipe right now because my plumber cut through the gas line in my shop and it leaked for 10 minutes. He's like, no. And I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm calling Nick and again, he's not answering. And I'm like, oh Jesus, they're all dead. My shop's gone. The whole building's gone. I'm literally cold sweating here in line at Home Depot. And I'm like,
oh my God.
So I call and he answers. He's like, what's up, Jay? And I'm like, Nick. I was like, is everything all right? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, my friend is coming down there. And he said, State Street's blocked off because of an explosion. He goes, oh, that's funny. He's like, no, it's not us. We're good. And I was like, what the fuck? I guess somewhere like by the Hess gas station, like over there was some kind of like propane explosion.
Jeez, man.
What are the odds that happened? Like
on that day.
Yeah, man, within an hour of it. I'm like,
heart sinking through the floor.
Yeah. So the plumbing got done. That was just a little bit of money, like maybe like less than $2,000 it cost me to have them do all the plumbing, which was very fair. Mm-hmm. And now, all the materials I bought, whatever, I'm a few $1,000s into this thing. And I'm like doing good right now, dude. Kristen's dad was helping me just for like Delania pizza, you know what I mean? And Fox and Park soda. That was like all he wanted for payment. Nobody else wanted to take payment. The plumbers were the only guys that took fucking payment. And I'm like, all right. So, and the rest I did like basically myself. And then I was stuck with, okay, now I have to furnish this place. And that's when like the whole brand was created. This is a true story. I go on, I think it might have been Minerva, which is like one of the beauty supply sites. And I was like, oh, these are cool chairs. These are cool stations. And it had a very like modern feel, which wasn't necessarily exactly what I wanted or had visioned, but it was like the best available. Like, you know what I mean? And so I put a cart together of like 4 chairs in 4 stations with a couple like odds and ends. And like with shipping, it was like $11,000. Like what? Like that's all the money that I had left, maybe even more. And I'm like, that's not going to work. So I'm just like, oh man. So I'm talking to Kristen about it and I'm like, I got a major problem here. I was like, I have to like furnish this place. Like I still need like waiting area, reception, like decorations. I was like, I don't know what to do. She's like, why don't you just use like an old dresser or something? And I'm like, now that's not a bad idea because I was thinking about it. And I'm like, what's a station? Like fucking flat surface, storage, compartments. I'm like, why couldn't a dresser work? Take up room, give me like a vibe, you know? And I'm like, all right. So I went to Goodwill on State Street. And I just saw this beautiful, like camel colored long dresser, like looked like it belonged in your grandma's bedroom. And I'm like, oh, I was like, that's it. That's the brand. I'm just going to do like a living room, like make it look like your house, like cozy living room furniture for the waiting area. Very cozy vibe. I'll use the antique dressers. I'll make them all like hodgepodge, like mismatched, no rhyme or reason. Just throw it all together, but make it look intentional.
Yeah.
And I walked out of Goodwill that day having bought 4 dressers, 4 mirrors, a couch, 2 chairs, a coffee table, and a buffet table for like $300. It was probably less than that. It was probably less than that, honestly. It was like $300. The couch was 99 cents. I have pictures of this.
The couch was 99 cents.
99 cents, and it was a humongous couch. And
you said you refurnished it.
Yeah, no, it was like a mustardy gold yellow color.
Yeah.
So I bought all this stuff, and I'm like, here we go. That's it. So I got it all there, cleaned it all just with like, Windex and Pine Sol and fucking Pledge, shined it all up. But I didn't try to like repurpose them and make them like perfect. I wanted the grit and like the wear and tear of them.
Yep. The natural patina of like things fading and whatnot.
Yeah. And then the mismatching mirrors on each station. And I was just like, wow, this is actually starting to work. I put lamps, like tall, old lamps with big lampshades. I'm like, all right, this is my brand. And then I went and got speakers, like the old tower speakers for your house, like stereo system.
The wooden, brown wooden ones with the little felt or whatever that was.
I drilled those fuckers straight into the wall and made them like shelves and just like 3-dimensional art, like wall hanging art. And then I've got a few pendant Edison bulb lights for the windows to give the window some more charm. And I'm like, this is it. It's the brand. And the brown and orange. Originally, the Skulll and Combs, if you look at some of the original stuff, it's like black and like a off-white skull, like black with like off-white. And then when I started this whole like vintage angle or direction, I was like, no, we got to do vintage colors. We got to do the orange and the brown.
And that's what the current logo is to this day.
Everything's brown and orange, yeah. So original walls in the salon were orange and then brown. It was like a lot. And then, maybe a year and a half into it, I was like, all right, we need white walls. The orange didn't photograph well for like hair pictures and shit. Like it just didn't look good. So I was like, we need some white walls. It needs to be brighter in here. So I closed for like a long weekend, and have my buddies come in and take everything off and paint the walls. And I've updated and rebranded, not rebranded, but like I took the sign down and put like a $10,000 sign up, like, gooseneck lights and like, nice acrylic, like letters and stuff. I made it look like legitimate, like a real brand. And that was it, man. The first year in business, we did just under $300,000 in sales, which was friggin' insane.
That is huge.
First year in business, I opened on January 4th, which I believe some of these numbers are pretty like coincidental too, because January 4th was the first day of hair school.
Yeah, I had that written down here. And also your birthday's in January, right?
January 13th, my birthday.
That's my birthday as well.
Same day?
January 13th, 87.
Oh, wow, that's wild.
Dude, we have a lot of similar things right now. It's quite...
Wow, that's creepy. Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the dates were kind of unique in that sense. And then first year, I mean, I put some stuff out on Instagram that I was opening a shop. I didn't have a single person lined up to work with me. I was just kind of like, I didn't have any clientele.
So this is the whole first year, or just?
Well, no, the first month.
The first month.
Say.
Got you.
I didn't have anybody. I didn't have anybody to work with. I didn't know. Like before I opened the doors, I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna like Kevin Costner, build it and see if they'll come, because I just like I didn't have any business really opening a salon. Like I was an in-demand barber or hairstylist. You know what I mean?
Did you have any of your contacts from Supercuts or any other spots? Or you're not allowed to collect that
So
data?
No, I didn't like try to poach or steal my clients from anywhere. I just was like, you could find me. You guys know my Instagram. You know how to find me if you wanted to come get your hair. And there's still, to this day, there's still people that saw me originally at Supercuts that still come even to Norwalk to get their haircut by me in that location. So first year, like 285 or something in gross revenue. I had a handful of people working. So when I first put out the vibe that I was like hiring a girl who I was friends with, but not like close by any means, in hair school, she reached out. She's like, hey, I saw you open a shop. She's like, I actually do like primarily barbering. And her Instagram was basically all of her like makeup, like pictures on herself, which were very good. She was very talented. And I said, oh, I was like, you're all makeup on your page. She's like, yeah, I work at like a mom and pop shop in Monroe, and I don't do a lot of like, photographing of my clients. It's not that type of like hair. And I'm like, okay. I was like, can you do like skin fades and stuff? She's like, oh yeah, I do like a ton of those. And I'm like, all right. I was like, you want a job? And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, can you bring like a model so I could see like, where your skills are at? And she basically did a better skin fade than I could do at that time. And I'm like, you're hired. Like, when do you want to start? She's like, whenever. And I'm like, awesome. And then some really like cool dude came in one time off the street, and he was like, hey man, he's like, my name's Tyler, how you doing? And I'm like, good, how are you? He's like, yeah. He's like, I think you're Jason, right? I think you worked with my ex or my girlfriend or whatever at the time, Jessica, at a different salon. And I'm like, oh yeah. She was crazy. The girl was crazy. She was super fun chick. And he's like, yeah, I'm actually in barber school. And I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, dude, this place is sick. He's like, I'm a neighborhood guy. Like, I would love to work at this place. I was like, I don't know if I have the budget to pay you right now if you're not cutting hair. I was like, but if you want to apprentice here, like help out, like, and like just learn, I'll teach you whatever I know. And he was like, yeah. So he did like 3 days a week for a year. Wow. Without getting paid. He was like a musician also. So he like had his side stuff going on, but he was there Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I believe, were the days he was there. So he was awesome. He was a really cool dude, really good like vibe. Wound up being a tremendously good barber. And then maybe like 4 or 5 months into being opened, another 2 girls from hair school were like, they were graduating, and they were like, oh, we want to work. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. Yeah. And so they came on, and then we had like a squad. We had like a little team, and it just continued to grow from there. And I was like, oh wow, like more people wanted to work. And then I was like, all right, so if I take this reception area and retail area out and like repurpose those or like figure out how to do that better, I could add 2 more stations. So I added 2 more stations, and now we went from 4 to 6 stations. And then everybody started getting busy, and then I was like, all right. In the second year, we did like, I don't know, it was like 4 change, like 450 or whatever. Like I think we grew by almost double.
Yeah, you said 280 something.
Yeah, it was like,
that's a big jump.
It was almost double. And then the third year, it was like in the high 6s. Wow. And then the rest is history. Like, we opened Norwalk, and then now it's cumulative between Norwalk and New Haven. But New Haven's just, I'm not going to throw out too many personal numbers.
Yeah,
but
New Haven's, you didn't even have to drop any numbers.
New Haven's a juggernaut now, and it's, now there's 8 stations. I own the building. You bought the building. I bought the building from the owners only a year and a half after I rented it. The day I signed my lease, I'm sorry, not the night that I signed my lease, but like a week or so after, he came down to kind of see what I was doing to the space. And, it was super friendly and just wasn't like giving me a hard time, just wanted to see what I was doing to his building. And I said, Steven, his name was Steven. I said, Steven, if I hope I don't offend you by saying this. I was like, but if, in the event that you ever decide to sell the building, I would really appreciate like first right of refusal. And I would love to own the whole property if you were ever going to get rid of it. I really like what I'm feeling here in this neighborhood and whatever. He's like, yeah, of course. He's like, I appreciate that. No problem. And then like a year and a half through my lease, he was like, yeah, Jason, so my wife and I, we just had grandkids, and we're getting older. We don't want to do another winter down there shoveling and, taking care of the bird. I think we're ready to sell it. So you had mentioned, so I wanted to give you like an opportunity. So I've already met with like my financial guys and stuff. We know what we want to get. This is the number. He's like, it's very fairly priced for what it is. And I'm like, is this really fucking happening right now? So this is actually a pretty cool story. I'm almost embarrassed that I almost just skimmed over it so casually. So he offers the building. I said yes immediately at the price that he said. No negotiations were needed. I did mortgages for many years. I was like familiar with real estate and mortgage approvals and all that stuff. But the first thought I had was, oh, how am I going to get approved for a mortgage like this big? It wasn't huge, but it was like big enough to where I was like, I don't have number one, I don't have 2 years of documented income. And I don't know if I had necessarily enough, even though I didn't have really a lot of other debt, like, credit report debt at that point. So I called my buddy who I worked with in the mortgage business. He was still in it. He had his own shop. I said, "Bud, I need a favor. I need to get a mortgage commercial deal, multifamily mixed use." He was like, "All right, what are the, give me all the numbers." So I gave him everything. We went back and forth for like weeks. I gave him everything I had. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, you can't get it done without the 2 years of income. He's like, it's just not possible at this point. So I'm like, so it's just a dead deal? And he was like, yeah. He's like, I don't know how else to do it unless you're going to pay him cash. And then he called me back like 10 minutes later. He was like, there's one more option. He's like, you got to get him in here for a meeting. And I was like, you want me to bring the landlord to your office? And he was like, yeah. He's like, so we're going to ask him if he'll hold a private mortgage for a year. And I'm like, oh, the guy just told me he's ready to retire. He just wants to like be done with it. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, all right, that's a Hail Mary, but like whatever. So I called him. I said, Steven, my mortgage broker, we're having like, a tricky time getting approved because I don't have the 2 years of income tax returns. He's like, oh yeah. He goes, I understand. He goes, he wants to like meet with you and like go over some options. I was like, are you willing to do that? Like have a conversation? He was like, yeah, it's right in New Haven. Cool. A day or two later, we all meet. He comes in the office. So I'm sitting there like a nervous kid, and my buddy's like, got this whole presentation for him. Like, little did I know what I was about to find out. He says, so Jason can't get approved for a commercial mortgage right now because of his lack of income. And the 2 years, the banks require the 2 years documentation, whatever. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I get it. Jason told me what it was. He's like, so what are you proposing? He was like, well, we were hoping that you might consider holding a note for 12 months, let Jason get his second year of tax returns complete, pay you just as though he would pay a bank. And then after the 12 months, refinance traditionally off the mortgage and pay you off in full. And he's like, okay, so I hold a private note for 12 months. Jason refis me off and we square up in 12 months. He says, yeah. He goes, all right. He goes, 5%. And I said, huh? And he goes, I'll charge you 5% on the amount. And I was like, so we're doing it? And he was like, sure. He's like, no problem. And I was like, really? It happened in 5 minutes, man. And I was like, he didn't need a second of convincing or talking or haggling.
He just negotiated the whole thing.
He just said 5%. And I looked at my guy. He was like, and I'm
That's
like,
a fucking great rate.
I'm like, okay, we're doing this. Handshake. 2 weeks later, we're having a closing. And I'm like, the lawyer doing the closing is also a friend and somebody who I was very familiar with from my years in the business. I used to use her firm for like closings all the time. So she calls me by my last name. She goes, hey, Bunce. She was like, you're never going to believe this. I said, what? She goes, Poopa, who's his last name, the landlord. She said, Poopa never had a conventional mortgage on this building. The landlord that he bought it from held it privately for 20 years.
Get the fuck out. What?
Yeah. So I said, you're shitting me. She goes, so he knew exactly what you were up against and he paid it forward to you because somebody did it for him. Man. They were immigrants. They were new to the country. They had no financial like records or anything, but they had money and the landlord was just like, sure. And the landlord was just like another Polish immigrant and just let them pay it off over 20 years. So he bought the building in 1986, I think. And in 2006, it was paid off in full. And it was private the whole time.
Dude, if that story doesn't make you tear up.
Sure. Yeah. I've retold it even on Instagram. If you search for my Instagram, you see me. It was on the anniversary. It was on the day I paid off. I need to tell you a little more to put this in full circle. 12 months comes. I pay him. Didn't miss a beat. Paid him every month. The 12 month comes. And before the 12-month, we started the whole process with the conventional mortgage. So the appraisal comes back about $90,000 less than we thought it was going to come back. So we've missed our estimated value on the building by almost $100,000, which really puts our loan to value ratio in grave danger at this point of getting approval, because the banks don't want to lend more usually than like 70% on a commercial deal. And we were like at like 90 or even higher based on the appraised value and the sales price. They were very like close. We had anticipated that in the next year, the property would have at least been appraised for X and given us that space we needed for the loan to value. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't. And we were stuck looking at like 90 something percent loan to value, which was a deal breaker. So now it's just like, now what? This dude wants to get paid. And I just paid him for a year. Like, and now you're going to tell me I can't get the deal done? And he was just like, I don't know what to do. So long story short, I don't have to bore you with all the little small details, but I had to come up with $100,000 in order to
make up the difference for the
make up the difference. Yep. So I had to come up with $100,000. So I at this point had good business credit and some like good financial statements from my business showing growth and like, you know, consistency. So I took $60,000 from this. I took $40,000 from this. And I was like, okay, so I got my 100,000. I put it in my bank, escrow, show the mortgage company that I have it. The day before closing, true story, they knocked me down approval, for approval, 70%. They knocked it down to like 60. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. He called me. He was like, dude, he's like, I don't know. I've just been on the phone with these guys for like an hour. I don't know what to do. He's like, we're cleared to close and something in underwriting kick this back. And they only want to do 60%. I'm like, how much is that, man? He's like, it's like another like 30 grand. And I'm like,
Jesus.
Yep. So I'm like, you understand, I took like absurdly high interest, like credit line from like Wells Fargo, plus a personal loan from like another like lending place. And I'm like, I don't have it. I don't have another 30 grand in me. He's like, I don't know. So now Steven is like, as patient and as docile as this guy has been, this has now put him like in a state of frustration because I had to tell him. He's like, geez, man. He's like, you're not making this easy for me, Jason. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, man. I was like, I don't know what else to do. I was like, I tried to do everything right. And I got the 100,000. And then 2 days before closing, they're like knocking it down another, like I need to come up with another 30 grand. And he was like, okay. He goes, I'll hold a private note for 30 grand for 3 years. You got to pay me every month for 3 years to pay it off. And I'm like, Steven, I don't expect you to do that. I was like, you don't have to do that. He's like, no, it's fine. I'll do that. He's like, let's just get the deal done. This guy held a private mortgage for 12 months. Now it's like 15 months at this point with all the hemming and hawing with the mortgage companies. And then we get to the closing day and it's like, oh, guess what? Yo, another 30. And he was just like, let's just finish this. And here's a private note for 3 years, 30 grand. And I'm like, okay. So all the attorneys drew it up. I closed. I had to pay the mortgage and then an extra 800 and I think it was 882.42 was my payment to him.
You remember that check number?
So 3 years, I Venmo'd him every month. I sent a Venmo every month, 832 State Street, payment number 1, payment number 2. And then just recently, I paid it off in full. It was September of 23.
There you go.
And I paid it off in full. And I was just like, wow, now I paid all the debt back too that I borrowed. The 100 grand that I borrowed, that was all paid off too. So I have all that paid off. I have his 30 clear. So now I just have like a $250,000 mortgage on a building that's appraised at like 700 now.
Yeah.
and I owned the building. I was able to like expand the salon, customize everything.
How many seats are in the salon now?
8.
8.
So
you
there's
went from
8
4
now.
to 6 to 8.
Yep. So there's 8 now. And then I rented, as soon as I bought the building, I rented the second floor apartment to a nice young couple. They were there for 4 years. And then a buddy of mine who's a realtor, him and I were just chatting. I was cutting his hair, and he puts it in my head that, you know, you should do short-term rentals, man. It's like, that's where the money's at. You can get way more money than you're getting just from like renting it out. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, but it's got no like curb appeal up there, bro. It's all old and like, you know, it's very outdated. It would need a completely like, you know, a reno. He's like, you should do a theme. He's like, you should do pizza. Like,
is that the Airbnb? That was my next. That was one of the topics I want to talk to you about.
That's a good segue into that. So he planted that seed in my head, and I ran with it. I was just like, oh my God, a pizza themed apartment in New Haven would be like, what? Why hasn't nobody else done this?
Yeah.
And so I talked to my tenants. It was about 3 or 4 months before their lease was up, and I gave them enough heads up. I was like, listen, guys, I'm not going to renew your lease. You guys have been great. It's nothing personal. I just have new plans for the building, and I want to start working on it ASAP. I was like, so I'm not going to renew. I just want to give you enough notice. No, Jason, you were great. We were thinking about getting a multifamily with our friend anyway, and yada, yada. I said, you could leave whenever from now until the end of your lease. Like you could leave. I'm not going to hold you to it, whatever. And they were out in like a month.
Really?
So they were out in a month. And then I was like, all right, now I get to start it. So I started working on the apartment. I redid the whole entire apartment. I put everything new. All
I've seen
new
pictures, man.
Yeah.
You guys, I'll put some pictures on the video if you can send me some more of it.
It's Pizza B&B on Instagram. It's listed on Airbnb. That's the only site that I have it listed on. So to just give you a little context in that, I spent probably about 65,000 to do the whole project. But that was, you know, curating all the custom pieces, the jukebox, the 100 CD jukebox, the diner booth, the Pizza Hut chandelier, all the furniture, TVs, floors, bathrooms, everything got done. The bathroom got redone. The kitchen got redone. The washers and dryers are brand new. Like, it's just it's like, I get like envious of it when I'm there. I'm like, I would wish to like live here. It's so cool.
It's really cool to see.
Yeah.
I have not seen it in person.
I'm happy to take you over there someday and show you. So I listed it on Airbnb and, you know, just did some reels and stuff. One of the reels got almost 100,000 plays, which was nice on Instagram. I put a lot of new followers on it, and it was off and running. And now first guest was December 23rd. And now in June, we are top 1% Airbnb host in the world. We are guest favorite and super host within our first 5 months. So we had about 55% bookings for May, which was our best month yet. We have about 45 reservations from now until the end of the year already booked. So it's been booking up like crazy. New Haven was already kind of like the pizza town, but then just really like conveniently took like another step into like the spotlight more recently.
Recently with all the
so the pizza tourism is like at an all-time high. So people see our listing now on Airbnb pretty quickly because we're a super host and it comes up quick.
For those listening and don't know, but Connecticut was just officially declared with the United States government as the pizza capital of the
New Haven specifically.
New Haven particularly, yes.
Yeah. So that was cool. It's arguable for a lot of people. The New York people, New Jersey, Ohio.
They can suck it.
Yeah, exactly. They're big pizza communities. And I've had pizza in New York and New Jersey, never Ohio. But I've had some good pizza in New York and New Jersey. But New Haven is just, I think, per capita, there's just so many good pizza places. And I think that's where it really comes into, you know, it doesn't mean that there's not a place in New York that has better pizza. Yep. You know what I mean? It's just the culture. And I think the fact that we as a community, and I said this in a comment on somebody's like crybaby post on one of those pizza pages on Facebook. It's not about like if your one pizza place is better than our one pizza place. It's about community and culture. And I think that's where, like, did you see Ohio get 100 restaurateurs and members of like the, you know, Congress and politicians get on a plane and go to Washington, D.C. to lobby for their pizza community?
Nope.
No, our community came together and declared this, and it became a thing. Like, you know, your community did not. You guys are all probably talking shit about each other. Our pizza community like backs each other up. Yep. Like, you know, There's friendly rivalries, but otherwise it's just like, it's a cultural thing.
We got so many good ones.
There's so many good ones, man.
It's unreal. I feel like
What's your favorite?
Sally's.
Yeah.
Sally's. I'm a Sally's guy.
Okay.
I think Sally's out of all. So I'll make my stance clear on this. Sally's is, I think, the most unique in terms of all the pies.
Sure.
I think it has the char, it has the sauce, and the moots. It all marinates well.
Mm-hmm.
Pepe's has its own flavor to it. Of those two, they're both one's wood fired and the other one's coal fired, or maybe they're both. I can't remember.
Sure.
But they have the nice char to them. Sally's has a little bit more character to their char. Their their dough is a little bit. I think it has like a more salty tang to it.
Yep.
Modern's roped into that like trifecta of the main three in New Haven. Modern's great. I think Modern's are just good. I think it's a good pie. Mm-hmm. It stands out. They actually have an amazing turnaround time. Like I feel like they work through their crowd quick. The one thing about Sally's is it's a small shop.
Yeah,
they can only bang out so many pies, even with the oven. But I always say this, regardless of the size of their shop, there's always a line in front of Sally's.
Sure.
Regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And my next to that would be Zoo Parties favorites, Zoo Parties and Mike's in West Haven.
Sure.
I'm missing somebody on that list. I don't know. I can't think of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with any of them.
You can't.
Yeah.
And Zoo Parties, I grew up in that. There's
Sure.
something unique about your spot too. And there's something when I seen the Airbnb spot that reminded me of Zoo Parties. When I was a kid, I used to do like all of your posts, like sports games, like
Sure.
things. Oh, we're going to go to Zoo Parties for pizza. And like that, the chairs and maybe there's a certain vibe about it.
Yeah. The paneling, the wood paneling.
There you go. Yeah. It all reminds me of that.
Yeah. I left the wood paneling in that one room. Everything else got a makeover.
And even the old like Coca-Cola, it's Coca-Cola sign.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something that is like very nostalgic.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. That was the idea, to capture that like era of like old school jukebox.
Yeah.
I
wonder how I'd feel in person just based on the photos. You feel that way.
No, you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it. Yeah. You look at our guest book and I've posted a couple like notes that people have left for us.
Yeah.
But even more recently, we had a guy, a husband and wife and their 2-year-old. And he wrote a note. He was just so sweet. The guy was just so like, like friendly and like, just a real like pleasure to like talk to. And he wrote a note. He was like, this is by far the most impressive Airbnb apartment we've ever stayed at. It was just so thoughtfully curated, and you could tell that you guys put a lot of effort into this. So it was like really sweet to hear. And I was not the only person to write something similar.
Sure.
They really, really enjoy it, because every room has an homage to like, pizza movies and, just famous things, little, quirky things too, like Pizza the Hut from Spaceballs. You remember that?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah. So Pizza the Hut, just like movies like I think it was Loverboy with Patrick Dempsey, where he was a pizza delivery guy. So just a lot of like Hollywood pizza references, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a lot of old pizza ads, like have the old from the 90s, the NFL quarterbacks. It was like Boomer Esiason and like, Warren Moon and like all these like 90s Jim Everett, 90s quarterbacks from the NFL were doing like a Domino's paid ad. There's just a lot of like really unique stuff in there. So that's been really nice. And it's also been, a lot of people have like come and stayed and then also got a haircut at the salon downstairs, which was also pretty cool.
How do they book that? You guys are so far booked out.
Yeah. So in advance, they've booked it. Two families particularly have come and, had appointments scheduled for their time there that they were staying. So that's turning out to be a pretty good decision.
So I have to apologize. I've never had a haircut by you guys, but, I'm the type of person that's like, oh, I need to go get a haircut, or the wife yells at me.
You go last minute.
And then it's like, oh, where do I go?
Sure.
And every time I look, it's like you guys are booked all
Which
the time.
is a blessing.
Yes.
It's a blessing and a curse for like, bringing in new people, like, or last minute people like yourself. Yeah. So it's been a challenge, but every now and again we put somebody new behind the chair. And the newer people, maybe they're listed as like an apprentice or a junior barber. They don't tend to book up as fast as the senior expert master barbers or stylists. So there's more of a chance of getting in with somebody who's newer behind the chair. But I've said this in interviews and in conversations with like other hairstylists and especially what I'm teaching. One of the real like blessings of opening that place is that I've been able to kind of separate myself from New Haven into the Norwalk salon, and New Haven just, it didn't, not only did it not skip a beat, but it grew. It grew without me being there because of the culture and the attitude and the familial environment that I created with the help of those people that work there. We've created an environment that is just so welcoming and fun. It's like a very unique experience. And it's like, the expression, my work here is done. Like, I feel like I don't have to be there, and it's still Skulll and Combs. Yeah. And it still feels like Skulll and Combs. And, I have to like tweak some stuff here and there or make sure I remind them, you know what I mean? But that's any boss, any business owner's role, is to always make sure like the brand is protected, because this brand is what has given us this opportunity in this yellow brick road, if you will. We have just this fairy tale of like, I could put you on my appointment app tonight, like as a barber, and people don't have to find your Instagram. They don't have to get verification of your cutting skills. They believe in the reputation of the business, and they like the brand, and they see your face and that you're available, and they'll book a haircut with you.
So I think that goes into a question I had for you. Actually, it was like, what do you look for in a stylist and barber to maintain your company culture and environment? Because it is very unique.
Sure. So I'm people first, 100%. And then skill and talent and all that stuff is second. I feel like hairdressing is such a personal experience between a client and a stylist or barber, that some places get it and some places don't. Some places are very transactional, and you could be very robotic and, not very communicative, like as a stylist, and it works because it's a very transactional place. I've always strived to not be a transactional place. I want people to feel like they're at like a clubhouse or like at the hangout for like the time that they're there.
It has a cozy environment.
Yes. So coziness, first of all, coffee and water and tea are offered. Everybody gets a nice shampoo and a scalp massage. Clean the hair, have that nice relaxing experience. A lot of barbershops don't do shampoos. Some do, of course, but a lot don't. And I think that's one of the tiny little nuances that really separate us, because we're not a barbershop, but we're not a hair salon in a traditional sense either. There's no reception area. There's just an iPad on a little like vintage credenza with some retail products. And our assistants and salon coordinators, they wear many hats. They'll run around and, they greet you, they shampoo a client, they sweep the floor, they do the laundry. They're really the lifeline of the place, because when I decided to go from 4 to 6 stations, I was basically creating this particular feature in my brand where that we're not going to have like a reception like person. We're just going to do this. Like, you know what I mean? Because for me to have somebody sit and just answer the phone and be on their phone all day long, just to like be a body there, to do nothing else but do that.
Doesn't make any sense.
It didn't make any sense. I want somebody that can be like, diversified, and somebody that's not afraid to work. So we eliminated in New Haven specifically. Norwalk is different because Norwalk is just a much different layout. We're in a mall. There's a lot of people walking up to the front of the place that need to ask questions or like, so it was a different setting. So we do have a desk in Norwalk. Is somebody sitting at that desk full time? No. If there's downtime and time to sit down at the desk, then sure. But it's not like there's a receptionist there just like snapping her gum and answering the phone.
Why did you actually choose the mall? Because you guys don't really take walk-ins. I mean, maybe you do. I'm just based on like how you guys, it sounds like you guys are booked up. So like you would think a mall where you would choose as a prime location because of all the walk-ins.
Sure.
But you could have probably chose any space in Norwalk, period,
and
still had the success just based off the name right now.
Yep. So it was only our 3rd year in business when I decided to pursue another location. So we certainly didn't have the reputation that we do now. I'll say with all the recognition from like Yelp, Entrepreneur. I was on the news with Ann Nyberg last year. So we got a lot more, and it's reflected in our numbers this year. We got a lot more like business is being driven to the shops over like the last like 12 months. And I have to pay like I have to pay some of that credit to like the exposure with Entrepreneur and Yelp and the TV, and even Chaz and AJ had me on the radio for 2 days in a row. Did a makeover on AJ.
Yeah.
So that was fun. But so I wanted to be down in Fairfield County. Norwalk wasn't like I didn't have to be in Norwalk per se, but I was looking and looking and looking, and the real estate expenses were wild. Wherever I was in Westport once, I was looking at a spot. I was like, wow, this would be a great spot. I called the realtor. He's like, yeah, that one's $24,000 a month. And I'm like, it's a lot of haircuts. Yeah. So I was like, all right, no thanks. And then I was like tabling the whole idea for a minute. And then, same guy, same cousin's husband who was doing my electric for me when I opened was also like the lead electrician on the mall's project. And he was like, why don't you try the mall? And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to be in a mall. Like, I don't know if I'm a mall brand. Like, we all have like, there's like a kind of like a stigma around like mall barbershops or salons, right? Like cookie cutter or speed in and out.
I can understand that.
So I was like reluctant at first, but then he was like, Jay, it's not like a real like traditional mall. It's super trendy. There's like really high-end stores like Apple, Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom, some really high-end anchor stores. Like it's really well done. Like it
does have a different feel. The first time I walked in there, I was like, what the hell is this place?
Yeah. So I went and visited the place. I took a tour with the leasing guy, and then was very surprised when the deal, like the numbers started being talked about. Like, oh, that's much more affordable than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I think we can make it work. I think if I decorated this place like I could see it happening, I think people will really like be drawn to it. And it worked. And we have probably 75 to 85% booked appointments now in Norwalk. And then we do have, on certain days we have time to take our walk-ins and such, but we don't turn too many people away. We have a good business. That business is up year on year, year after year, it goes up. Everything since day one, knock on wood. Even with the COVID year, because of the opening of the second shop, year over year, the business grew percentage wise and bottom line wise. And then we just have kept going since then. So it's been a really cool experience to see this thing kind of develop as it has. And, I've got some stuff coming down the pipeline too that I'm not just so close to being able to talk about it.
You don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, I can't until everything's finalized, but it's some more exciting stuff that I'm going to be sharing soon.
What was great though is because I had actually a lot of questions, and your background story really kind of covered a lot of those things of how to continue the conversation.
Sure.
So I know you had mentioned, you're like, oh, am I long-winded? No, you're actually taking care of my job much easier for me.
Sorry.
No, that was great. I do want to I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I do want to kind of ask you some other questions. What would be the biggest mistake you made in this business journey so far, and what have you learned from it?
So I can't really call it a mistake, but the timing of opening the second salon was pretty inconvenient. Also, in that whole process of opening the second salon, I was a little like too ambitious and too eager to just get my second shop that I didn't really study the lease and the details of the lease enough to fully understand what I was signing. Now, it didn't necessarily hurt me, but it could have badly. But because of COVID and all the nuances that it brought into, businesses and agreements and contracts and all that stuff because of the shutdowns and everything, everything wound up working out. But it could have gone very sideways if, let's say, I'm sorry, I got a little itch.
It's all good.
If that stuff didn't necessarily happen and business just, took off, I could have gotten myself into a pretty like unreasonable like situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big mistake signing that lease.
Did you have a lawyer for that one? Or no, you just kind of
So I did. I used that same closing attorney that I mentioned earlier. She's just a friend that I've known for years, and she's pretty trustworthy. So I just shot her over my lease, and I was like, "Can you just, once over this thing and let me know?" And she even mentioned, she's like, "This is pretty like, these are like mob rates they're looking at." And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "But it's only based on this. If this situation happens," she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "But that could easily happen." And I'm like, all right. And then I just kind of like, I just went with it. I just didn't like fight it. And I just went with it. And it could have been a bad mistake. If we went on a different path, like other than COVID, it could have wound up being a pretty big mistake. That could have cost me a lot of money. So I've made a few bad hires. I've hired some people that I just didn't spend enough time qualifying.
It happens. You can't. You deal with it says, would you use the rule of numbers or large numbers?
Yeah, the law of large numbers.
Law of large numbers. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's with people too. It's like, you have a lot of people come through your door that want opportunities, and you can provide opportunities to these people, but you're gonna get a dozen duds before you get a good one.
Yeah. And in the hindsight of that, on the other side of that is that I've gotten some really good people.
Yeah.
I've gotten people that have been there for years. So, yeah, I think business-wise, just being a little more patient and a little more calculated with making big decisions like signing commercial leases and in real estate that's owned by the largest real estate holder in the world. Like,
let's get a better lawyer.
Need a little more attention than what I did, but it's worked out. I have a very good relationship with them. I've actually been approached from several other Brookfield properties that want me to open in their malls. Also, so there's growth potential in the brand. It's a very marketable brand.
Were you able to renegotiate that lease because of that COVID stuff?
And not because of the COVID stuff, just because of the natural progression. I signed a 3-year lease.
Yeah.
In the COVID, the wake of all the COVID mess, I signed a 6-month extension to basically account for like a 2-month abatement of like, I think it was, April and May. I had already paid my March rent, and then the shutdown happened like mid-March.
Yep.
And then we were closed for the full April and May.
Jesus.
So they were trying to get rent for April and May. And I'm like, you won't even let me get in my salon right now. You want me to pay rent?
You've locked me out. Yeah.
But he's like, well, but the lease says, and I'm like, no. So what do you want to do? And they were like, all right, we'll forgive April and May, but you got to sign an extension. And that's the funny part. This is not very funny, but the guy who I negotiated with told me, we're just going to add the 2 months onto the end of your lease. I was like, all right, yeah, no problem. Extend the lease 2 months, whatever. And then he sent me the DocuSign. It was just like a 2-page amendment, and I signed it and I sent it back. And then my lease was coming to an end at the time that I thought it was supposed to end. And so I called my leasing guy and I was like, hey, I was just trying to get a jump on, the renewal and, get our talks. And he's like, oh, you got plenty of time. And I was like, there's only a few months left. And he was like, no, you got until July. And I'm like, no, I got until like March or whatever. And he was like, no, it's pretty sure it's July. And I'm like, no, because I signed in January and then I signed a 2-month extension. And he was like, yeah, but you signed a 6-month extension, not 2-month. And I'm like, no. He said 2-month. And he was like, no, 6-month. And I'm like, I'm going back through the emails and the text messages with the guy, and never does he say the duration in writing. It was just over the phone. I swear to God, that actually happened. He told me 2 months. I'm not deaf.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah,
He told me 2 months, and then he sniped me for 6 months, which was, I didn't plan on closing the shop anyway, but it was just a matter of like character. You know what I mean? So I signed a 2-year extension, and I'm good until July of next year. But the salon's doing good. I got a good crew of people. We got a very loyal clientele. I wish it was a little busier, but the mall is what it is. I mean, it's just shopping centers like that. I mean, we're lucky to even like still be going. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of potential in that building. It's just a matter of, are we going to overcome like technology and, is brick and mortar retail like still going to be like a thing? And I think if it's done right and it gives enough, if you give enough reasons for people to come there, like, experiences and, and options, I think those places still can exist. you know.
Yeah. Well, you seem to be doing very good. And after hearing your story, obviously you have a lot to like be proud of. That was an amazing journey. I actually didn't even expect to get all that. That was that was awesome to hear.
Yeah.
I don't want to dig too much more into it, but I will ask you just some other questions.
Sure.
If you can cut the hair of any 3 people, dead or alive, and obviously get that time to know them, who would you choose?
I've never thought about this question. 3 people ever. The first person I thought of was Nikola Tesla.
He had a good haircut.
Tweak that mustache and all. I'm a truth seeker. I'm a truth challenger. I'm always just like, what's the message here? I look at movies, I look at shows, I look at just everything through
got to question everything, man.
What's really going on here? And that guy's life and history of his technology and the suppression of such and the manipulation of things it's just forever. Like, we can literally be living free of energy expenses. And that goes for vehicles and homes and lighting. Everything could be free, generated with the power of the invisible energy that just floats in the air. And we don't have it because of greed and control and stuff like that. And that's a whole nother conversation and probably in a whole other podcast.
I could talk about that stuff for hours. But,
okay.
I have much respect about Nikola Tesla and
sure.
I'm very well aware of all of that.
Yeah. Yes. I would love to cut his hair and just talk to him about the stuff that he created.
On that patent.
Yeah. I feel like that would just be a fascinating conversation. Who else? Jeez, man, that's a really tough question.
Well, I mean, were there any role models that you looked up to in life, or even to like start your business? You know, I'll take Nikola Tesla as your one answer.
So hairdressing, there weren't many like I want to be like him type of people. I'll tell you though, I've listened to quite a few like podcasts and YouTube channels of people that have really kind of helped put some cool perspective into my mind and also help guide me and coach me into like making good decisions and like having good lifestyle habits and things like that. So as cheesy as this one might sound, maybe like someone like Tony Robbins.
I love
just
listening to him.
Incredible human being. The story of his like youth and the different men, fathers, and the poor, and just he's got a really incredible story. And he's just such like a polarizing figure. He definitely would be somebody who I would
love to sit down with that guy. I would love to just have a conversation with him. I don't have the money to afford his things.
Yeah.
But he is. My wife listened to, or actually read his book, and she had a lot of good things to say about it. And then I believe I started listening to this audiobook, which he read. Which was pretty
very
neat.
cool. And I think if I had to pick one more current who I've only found in the last couple years, but I find him fascinating. His story of being, an Iranian immigrant, escaping like, a hostile like bombings every day. His family escaped Iran and came here when I think he was 7 or 10. His name is Patrick Bet David.
Oh yeah. PBD.
Okay, so he's very fascinating to me. I like all his stuff. I'm actually going to a seminar of his.
Vault.
Yeah, I'm going. I bought tickets. A ticket for myself to go in September.
Heck yeah!
I'm just taking a
flight.
flight.
He has The Rock.
Yeah, I just saw that. I bought before that. I saw he was announced. I have mixed emotions about The Rock. I'm not like a huge fan, but I'm not like
okay.
Yeah.
We did talk about wrestling earlier.
Sure, right? Yeah, but the vault looked like something that I haven't done anything like that, and I feel like I'm at a point right now where I've gotten like a lot done and a lot accomplished, but I'm not done quite yet, and I have a lot more that I'd like to do. I feel like I just need that extra like nudge, and I feel like I don't know. My friend circle is just so small. It really is. I don't have like a lot of like bros.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm so motivated and ambitious in like business, and I invest a ton of real estate, cryptocurrency. Like I do a lot of investing, and that stuff interests me. And it's just so.
Let's go party when your Bitcoin hits 30K, man. I saw that post.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's it at right now?
70 basically.
It's 70K.
69 this morning.
How much did you have in that?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Early or when?
So I started getting exposure to Bitcoin like in the teens. So I've accumulated a nice position, not only in Bitcoin but some other stuff too.
Yeah.
I've done really good in some of them, and some I've laid some eggs. Just like any seasoned now almost 5 years in the crypto world. I've took some definite big like L's just trying to like speculate a little too much. And catch that lottery ticket, meme coin, or something else that like is overhyped. There's a lot of money to be made in that world, but that's a whole nother, like I said, that's a whole nother conversation. But getting back on track, I just have a lot of like things that I'm interested in, and I don't necessarily have like the network to like share it with, or like, like my buddies, I try and talk with some of my buddies about it, and some are like, interested, not interested. So I feel like going to something like the vault is inevitably going to at least expose me to, and like maybe let me meet some new people. And, I'm going down by myself. I'm just getting an Airbnb and a rental car. I'm going to be in West Palm Beach for a week, 3 or 4 day seminar, and then just have time to like really clear my head, get all my thoughts written out, get on the computer, explore some new ideas. And I think that's important for people to do, because the monotony and the rat race of like everyday life, sometimes it just is like when do you get that week of time to really like reset your brain and refocus if you don't schedule it and like just put it down like this is happening?
You have to do that.
Yeah.
Because you'll continue to show up to work and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think that's something, the wife, need to do more often.
Yeah.
But every time we have set something, we've always fulfilled it.
Sure.
But it's just like, getting out of your business brain mindset.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be fun. I'd be curious to catch up with you. Maybe we'll go have some New Haven pizza and talk about your experience at the vault.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't have to do it on the podcast, but that would be just a fun thing to do.
Sure.
I'm gonna ask you one more question, then I have a little something I want to do. It'd be funny. I think it'd be funny.
Okay.
If you could instantly become an expert in anything, what would it be?
Cryptocurrency.
Do you have any dad advice?
Yeah. Be present. Enjoy the small moments. Like last night, I was just having a moment. I have a 17-year-old son with another woman, and he's never lived with me. I've never lived with him ever since the day he was born. Maybe like for a few weeks or whatever. His mom and I just had a rocky relationship before she was ever even pregnant, and then it just we tried and it just didn't work. We were like oil and water. So that was hard, because a lot of his young years were also my struggling to figure life out years. And so there was just a lot of I was broke. She was hounding me. I was not meeting my responsibilities 100%. Never deadbeat status. Never walked away with my hand up, couldn't do it. Always made my efforts, but struggled for sure. Lost a lot of critical years of bonding and stuff with him in those years, which it eats away at me. I'm getting to enjoy those years with Harper because we live together, and I'm actually able to be a dad. And last night my son was over, the older one, and we're at my house, and my nephew's over, who's my older son's age. So the two teenagers, and then Harper, and then Kristen and I, and I'm grilling hamburgers. We're having soda. The kids rode the bikes to the convenience store and got candy. We're passing the football. Those moments where you're just sitting outside on the deck that you built and the little humble house that you have, and your kids are playing. It's those are the moments that that are important, I think. And especially from being a businessman and somebody who's on the go. It's sometimes I have to literally take a second and be all right, I need to give this kid my attention. What am I doing here? I show up at every game, And I try to do as much as I possibly can for him, as far as like providing whatever he needs, giving him as much opportunities, sending him to camps. We just registered him for a second year at Camp Hazen in Chester, where he goes for a sleepover camp for a full week. Giving those opportunities and experiences that I didn't necessarily have, you know, going something like a sleepaway camp. That's like fairy tale shit. When we pulled up there, I don't know if you've ever been up there.
No.
It is like an 80s summer camp movie when you pull up. It's like the lake, the woods, the cabins in the woods, the big mess hall. Like it's like rock climbing walls, zip lines, the blob out in the lake. Like,
sounds like so much fun
dude,
for a kid.
I'm like, do they have these for 40-year-olds? Because I would love to go.
Just sign a waiver.
Doing things like that for them, being able to like go on vacations. Like we're going to Aruba on Father's Day. Like, I mean, that's all the money I need to make in this world is just enough to like do these things. I think, you know what I mean? Just to have a little bit of freedom and a little bit of luxury. I don't need like a bougie lifestyle, but I like my car. I like my motorcycle. I got a nice humble house. I don't need much. You know what I mean? Some new Jordans. But like, I'm not super fancy and I don't need to make millions and millions of dollars, but I do want to make enough to where I have options. And I think that's an important part about being a dad too, is that you're a leader, a role model, like an instinctual provider and protector. Those are the things that I think really need to be ingrained in a dad. Like I must take care of this family. I must protect it and I must provide for it. And I think if a lot of men approached life with that mentality to like take responsibility and take care and protect and provide and just overcome those, maybe those years or those timelines in your life when you maybe haven't done those things or haven't figured it out, you know, it's just never too late to figure that stuff out. It's never too late to be like the person that you have the potential to be, you know? So that's some good dad advice. I think you just be present, be a protector, be a provider, be a good role model, lead by example, you know?
I couldn't agree more with every single word you said there.
Yeah.
I mean, we need more fathers like yourself in this world.
Thank you, bro.
I think the world would be a better place like that. So I was trying to think of something unique for you, and I appreciate your time here.
Sure.
So I came up with a game.
Okay.
It's called Bad Cuts, Good Cuts.
Okay. I love it already.
All right. So I have some pictures here, some people you might recognize.
Sure.
And you're going to tell me they have a bad cut or good cut.
Okay.
All right. This handsome fella.
Handsome guy, very fair, average haircut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I thought Ryan Reynolds would have got a better.
No, I'm looking at the haircut and like from a technical perspective and a stylistic perspective. I'm just gonna like be as honest as I can.
That's perfect.
It's very fair.
Okay.
I mean, you can fucking shave his head and he'll look good because he's a handsome guy.
He does.
But yeah, the haircut's like not technically sound.
Okay. Oliver Tree.
It's awful, but like in the best way possible.
This guy has the craziest hair. He had a bowl cut for the longest time.
I can't even believe that's a real hair. That's real haircut?
I have no clue. I've seen people yank on his hair.
Yeah. I mean, if it's real, it's just even, it gets more points because it's just so ridiculous.
All right. Mr. James Dean.
That's just timeless. That's perfect. Yeah. Just
He
perfect shape, texture, everything's there. That's really good.
He had it going back then.
Yeah. I actually would love to have that haircut.
The opportunity to cut him or the...
No, for my hair to personally look like that.
Yeah. All right, what else I got here? Do you recognize this person?
Yes, I do. He's not my client, but he's a client of Ethan's, who was a barber at my shop. I think that's a really technically sound haircut. Very modern and very like edgy. So
I saw that kid's hair. I was like, that's a dope cut.
Yeah, no, that's there's a lot more that goes into a cut like that, like building that shape than the non-barber or stylist really understands. So yeah, technically sound cut. Good, very good cut.
All right. Bad cut, good cut.
What's his name? Riff Raff? Yeah, awful. He's a character. Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah.
I don't even know who styles him up.
I know. Doesn't it make you mad that people like that have like
gajillions of dollars?
Yeah.
I have no clue. All right. Bad cut, good cut. Good old JT.
Great haircut. Yeah.
Great haircut.
Yeah. Just classic. It's well done. Scissor cut, probably maybe a little clipper on the sideburn. Yeah. Very good haircut.
All right. This guy, Robert Patterson. What do you think about that cut that he went out with?
Oh no, that's a dare. There's no other explanation unless he's filming Fifth Element
I have
Part
no
2.
clue if this is even real.
Yeah.
I just pulled up Robert Patterson hair.
Yeah. That's definitely like a dare, or he was filming for like a movie or something. Yep. Excuse me.
What a nose. You're all good.
Yeah.
All right. You might recognize this person too. Bad cut, good cut.
Oh, that's actually a tremendous haircut.
That was phenomenal.
Done by yours truly.
Yes, I saw that and I was like, damn.
Yeah. Yeah. He has a great head of hair, handsome kid. So able to do a nice combination of, some long hair, really textured with some nice, like tight, like fading on the side. Yeah. That's a technically sound haircut, styled very nicely.
There's too many cuts to go through on your.
Yeah.
All right. Bad haircut.
Oh, DT. Oof.
Good old DT.
Yeah. Love him or hate him. The hair is something else.
What could he have ever done to improve his hair? Or did he just...
I don't know. Have you ever seen, I've seen stuff on like how they style it. He's rather bald underneath there. Like it's
Really?
it's like very interesting how they do it. They like blow dry it and then like kind of fold it on itself. Yeah, that hair is not like just on his scalp being brushed back. It's like long hair that's like fold. I think. I don't know. I would love to get my hands in there though and like find out for myself.
Let's try and arrange that one.
Yeah.
Let's figure that out. A DT, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Bad haircut, good haircut.
I hate that.
What the fuck was he doing?
I don't know. He looks like Ellen DeGeneres, kind of. That's Bieber, right?
Yeah, that is Justin Bieber.
Yeah. No, I don't like that.
I don't know what he did.
Yeah. I mean, dreads are like a phase. People go through it, whatever. I don't love it.
Bad haircut, good haircut.
The best.
The best.
You got to give her a shout out. Haircuts and hot dogs. That's Kelsey at the. I'm actually at her station. She's a stylist barber that works for me. She's primarily in Norwalk. One day a week she's in. That's who you should go see on a Wednesday in New Haven for your haircut.
Okay, I'll
she's
go get my haircut.
She's really good. Yeah, and that's. I was sitting at her station. She's got the only bright pink station with pink decorations, and I was wearing a pink sweatshirt that day. So I took a picture.
I thought it was a great photo of you, man.
Thank you.
That was a good photo of you.
I appreciate
it. Do you
it.
wear glasses prescription-wise?
No, those are just like
stylish.
Fashion. Yeah. Yep.
So Kelsey does your hair.
Yeah, Kelsey, but I mean, everybody does. Adam, Ethan, Kelsey, they all cut my hair. It's just more or less like who am I not going to inconvenience?
Yeah.
Because I'm not scheduling it. I'm just going to like kind of sneak into the chair at some point during the day. So, but they're all very solid and
How do you choose what you're gonna get for a cut when you get it? I feel like I've had basically probably the same haircut my entire life.
Sure, yeah.
I've never been able to go to a stylist and be like, hey, give me something
Sure.
trendy, cool,
Yeah.
fun. I feel like maybe it's because I go to Supercuts, but
But just looking at your hair, you're limited to an extent because of the texture of your hair.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like bouncy, curly. It's not super curly, but you have like a strong wave in your hair, so it's not going to necessarily like fall or flow until it gets to a certain length. When it gets to a certain length, the curls will like loosen up a little bit and it'll be a little more malleable. But while you're in this like short range, it's hard to create like different styles unless you're doing something radically different. So what I look for mostly in a haircut let's just say with everybody, but mostly men, is I look for like squareness and like masculinity in the shape of the haircut. So you have to take everything into consideration when I look at a client who sits in the chair. I look at their face structure, the size of their jaw. Are they heavy? Are they thin? Do they have a skull that protrudes at the occipital, or does it recede? Does it go in like egg shape, light bulb? Is it a perfect oval? Like there's so many different things to consider, but from a visual perspective, when you're looking at somebody straight on, oval from the chin through the hair is the most flattering shape. So right now you're looking pretty balanced and pretty oval with your beard and your hair in relationship. Everything's pretty oval. So you're doing good right now as far as like how your hair and face shape work together. Some people will come in with a very like skinny face, and then their hair is just really wide, and it looks like they look like Beaker from the Muppets. You know, it's like, no, this is no good for you. We need to like, you know, and I educate people. Look at yourself as a shape and not like just at your face. Look at your chin, whether you have a beard or not, all the way through the haircut, and try to imagine oval. And that means, you know, not taking somebody too high up over the round of the head, because that'll create more of like an egg shape. Or if you take somebody too skinny all the way up, it could create like a racetrack look, which is not oval, it's more condensed. So I look for oval in pretty much everybody's hairstyle that I try to create. And for most men haircuts, I try to really maintain that weight line in the parietal area, which is that round of the head, to keep it nice and square, because that's a masculine look. That's really it. I look for shape and try to like work with people's specific hair situations, right? Because density and texture and all those things are different on everybody, and the bone structure of everybody is quite different. So there's a lot of nuances. That's why hairdressing is like, it's not easy. It really isn't. I mean, you think, oh, cutting hair, but if you're like, you're going to do it good at a high level and like really like put somebody's like best look on them, like you really need to understand face shape, bone structure, texture. I have $20,000 worth of shears. That's not an exaggeration. At least $20K worth of shears, probably another $5K worth of like clippers and trimmers and guards and combs. So I invest in my tools. I have the right tool for the job. Anytime somebody comes in, it's like everyone's different, right? So when the plumber comes to the house or the contractor comes to the house, they need a very specific set of tools to do all the different types of jobs. So I kind of view hair cutting like the same way. You need a lot of different tools in order to do the job as best as possible.
Yeah. Hey man, you're a master of your trade.
I appreciate that.
It's exciting to see the growth that you've had.
Yeah.
And the success.
Thank you.
You're definitely an inspiration to myself. I like seeing the growth, and obviously I'll be a supporter of you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time today. Can you just let us know like where people can find you online and your locations?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on today. That was really nice of you to ask. So Skulll & Combs Company is the salon, skullandcombs.com. Actually, I missed that part of the story. I was able to buy skullandcombs.com off the person who owned it. So it was skullandcombscompany.com, but then I was able to negotiate for skullandcombs.com very, very affordably, actually. But anyway, skullandcombs.com is our website. Skulll & Combs, Instagram, and Facebook. I don't do much Twitter or Snapchat or anything like that. My personal Instagram is Radical Jason, where you'll see a mixture of the pizza apartment, the salons, my personal life. It's just pretty inconsistent. I just, sometimes I'll post funny stuff. That's pretty much it. The Pizza B&B is the Airbnb if you want to check that out. It's listing on Airbnb app and website. That's pretty much it, man.
All right. Thank you again for your time, brother.
Cool. Thank you.
Pleasure to
Appreciate
actually get
it.
to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
All right.